across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She's back tomorrow, of course, at 10 o'clock. Coming up on the programme, Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, you're ahead of me here, I know, have set out more assertive European positions on global security. They have committed the UK and French troops to help secure Ukraine following any future peace deal. Do you support British troops on Ukrainian ground? Your thoughts on that? Meanwhile, both leaders have also come together to issue a rare joint rebuke to Donald Trump over Greenland, stressing that the island belongs to its people and that only Denmark and Greenland can actually decide on its future. But is there a bigger picture afoot here? Details to come. And the government is consulting on cutting the drink-drive limit, as you've been hearing with Julia, in England and Wales to match that of Scotland and European levels, alongside tougher penalties and new measures to curb drink and drug driving in a bid to reduce road deaths. If you are hell-bent on having a beer too many and getting behind the wheel, does any kind of rule or regulation make a difference? And I am intrigued, if you've ever been caught, what were the implications for you? We're looking for a bit of brutal honesty here. Our lines are open, everything you need to know, and of course, importantly, we bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Will the UK, will the world be a safer place in a year's time? So a year from now, so we're literally at the beginning of January. It's a horrible time, isn't it? The beginning of the year. It's grinding to sort of start to begin the year, get into it. But I don't take really a year seriously until we get into December, frankly. So I've got a long way to go. But will we be safer in a year to come? It is that phrase, isn't it? Boots on the ground. Your country needs you. Is the UK about to go to war? All of these things are being said. Conscription. None of that is in the planning, by the way, right now. The Americans are essentially constructing an armoured circle around the US right now. Britain will deploy boots on the ground in Ukraine as part of a proposed ceasefire deal backed by Donald Trump. That makes it rather interesting. This was the joint declaration for the multinational force to help uphold any peace agreement and prevent another invasion by Russia. It was signed yesterday in France by Keir Starmer and, of course, the French and the Ukrainians, Mr. Macron and Mr. Zelensky, both signing on the dotted line. The deal includes Britain and France setting up what they are at this stage calling military hubs in Ukraine to facilitate troop deployment if needed, and to also help with reconstruction efforts. So kind of peacekeeping-y type, is that what it is? Do you support this idea? The plan does have the support of America, which has now offered a backstop to support European troops in the event of a future war with Russia. Now, if you add that against the backdrop of what's been going on elsewhere globally, I'm thinking Venezuela, but perhaps more poignantly Greenland as well, you have to scratch your head and wonder what century we are living in. Isn't this kind of bizarre? I've said this before. When I was at school, I remember, I think this was in primary school, the teacher saying, you're the first generation not to really have any understanding or experience a country at war. Because, of course, previous generations have been at the tail end of World War II and their parents had full knowledge of it. And then as you go through the years, us youngsters were seen as the first generation. There was no war going on. There were clearly some troubles with what was going on in Northern Ireland. But generally speaking, it was a far more peaceful place. Are we going backwards in that respect? Will the world be a safer place in a year's time? 0344 499 1000. And let me put it like this. Do you support UK boots on Ukrainian ground? Would you subscribe to this happening? And we're talking about, we have armies, we have navies, air force, etc. I mean, this is, one could reasonably argue, exactly what we have a military for. Do you support it? Lines are open on that and your wider view of the kind of world we're sort of currently living in. It's all a little bit precarious, isn't it? Also this afternoon, anyone remember this?
Yes, sir. So, would you mind stepping out of the car and doing a breath test?
Look, you had 2 pints, you're over the limit. That's a 12-month ban and a criminal record.
Hey, it's company policy. I've got to let you go.
I know it's only got 20,000 on the clock, but that's my final offer.
Oh, that's just great, Matt. No licence, no job. Now what?
So, what's it going to be?
That was a drink driving campaign from nearly 20 years ago. Today, we learn that drivers could be limited to 1 pint or even less under a tightening of drink drive laws. The government are proposing this. Now, of course, on the face of it, you say, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe we should have a zero tolerance to alcohol. I'm told that there are implications to having a zero tolerance to alcohol in that you could still potentially, if there was a zero tolerance, 2 days later have alcohol in your breath. There could be a medication you're taking that could throw up an alcoholic reading, albeit tiny, but it would be enough to say you have alcohol on your breath. I don't know whether that is true. This is the biggest proposed change since, the first change since 1967. So they're consulting on this, dropping it from 35, that's the milligram content of alcohol per 100 millilitres of breath, to 22. Does that solve the problem? Does that address the fundamental issue? I think generally speaking, and I've known people that have been collared for drink driving, almost always the same story, that I didn't think I was over the limit, and in one case I only live round the corner. And in one case that I'm thinking of in particular, we were all quite young, actually, but we got in a car, and the guy driving said, he was fine, he hadn't really had much of a drink, and we were literally going around the corner. He only got in his car because he needed his car to continue his journey after he dropped us off, but it was round the corner, that was the point. And he got done, and he got an 18-month ban. I think that's more or less standard, 18 months or thereabouts. It can be more. I think sometimes you might get a 12-month ban. But I'm going to ask for a bit of brutal honesty here. Have you ever been nicked drink driving? For whatever reason, you didn't think you were over, you thought it was a family emergency, it was only down the road, etc. What I'm intrigued by, and I think these are perhaps the more frightening stories than any government commercial, helpful as they may be, are the individual stories. Because one person I know that got done a few years ago for this, everything about their life was destroyed for 2 years. They got an 18-month ban, but it was, they lost their job, they couldn't work, they couldn't go. The implications of having your car removed for that period of time was absolutely huge. That's the bit I'm interested in from you as well, in addition to asking the question whether this fundamentally will address the issue of people who go over the limit, reducing it, or do you just need to ban alcohol altogether? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. Chloe Dobbs has joined us in the studio, a political commentator, to talk through the big stories of the day. Afternoon to you, Chloe.
Afternoon, Ian.
Good to see you. Let's start off with Macron and Starmer, who set out a more, what you call, an assertive European stance on global security, committing the UK and French troops to help secure Ukraine following any future peace deal.
We signed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future.
God, he's good. Keir Starmer talking yesterday. Meanwhile, elsewhere on planet Earth, both leaders have come together, this is the French and the British, to issue a rare joint rebuke to Donald Trump over Greenland, stressing the islands belong to its people and only Denmark and Greenland can decide its future, pushing back against the United States comments that have appeared to have heightened transatlantic tensions.
Firstly, I believe that the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is including our NATO and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War.
That is not an AI computer. That is a translator speaking on behalf of the Danish president. There you go. So there we are, Chloe. We've got everything going on here, haven't we?
I know.
That's the state of play. We're in a funny place, aren't we, on planet Earth right now?
Yeah, I mean, we were saying before the show, it's so confusing. We've got to be experts on Ukraine, Venezuela, and then Greenland. Is all going on. I mean, starting with...
We spoke a week ago, of course. You came on the show over Christmas.
Yes.
And the most poignant conversation we had was, for some bizarre reason, was about how to stop hiccups. Because we were reading that data, weren't we, about strange reasons why people go to A&E.
Yes.
And here we are, like 7 days later.
I know last week we had to be an expert on hiccups, how to stop hiccups. Luckily our viewers helped us out.
Geopolitical potential terrorism, Greenland, Ukraine, boots on the ground. The world is changing by the hour.
I mean, the world is certainly hotting up in that sense. Well, I mean, Greenland's quite a cold country, but you get
Take
the
your
point.
Yeah.
I mean, where should we start? Ukraine, I think there are people who are going to be very nervous about the idea of British troops being sent to Ukraine. I think we have to be pragmatic. The attempts to make a deal with Russia so far have been, let's say, not very productive. I think Trump thought very boldly that he'd be able to end the war within, what was it, a day or a week, he promised, and it's not really worked out. Russia's not really playing ball. If this is the only way to end the war, then maybe it's a possibility. If it's a choice between us sending troops there or us constantly sending money there in an endless stream and they never get anywhere in the war, maybe sending troops there is a better option. But the thing that concerns me about this is we have had, over the past couple of years whilst this war has been going on, we have been sending not just a load of our money, but all of our stock of ammunition to Ukraine to help them, such that the UK is putting itself in a precarious position where if we were to be invaded on our territory, of course it's unlikely, but there is a small possibility, right? We just would not have the stock of ammunition to do so because we've given it all to Ukraine. And what I'm part of this plan to put boots on the ground there is not just putting soldiers there, but also taking a stock of weaponry there to help defend Ukraine if necessary. I just think we're possibly putting ourselves in quite a weak position if we do so.
Yeah. I mean, there is the sense that, I mean, what lots of people come up with the argument, well, it's Ukraine, what's it got to do with us? But of course, it is on European soil. It's just essentially just down the road in geographic terms. So, is our responsibility? I mean, do we have a moral responsibility because it's on European soil? And yet we know what happened the last time somebody on European soil invaded a country, back in the day. What is our connection to this? I think many scratch their head and think, well, why?
Well, I think this is the situation in Ukraine is far more of a concern to Starmer and Macron than it would be to Donald Trump, as much as Donald Trump is trying to do what he can to try and bring everyone to the negotiating table and sort this out. He's very focused, for example, on Venezuela at the moment, but Venezuela is not a huge threat to us because it's not on our doorstep. Ukraine is very close to us on our doorstep, and the concern is how do we end this war in a way that it doesn't lead Putin on to them wanting to invade other countries, Poland, the Baltic countries, potentially starting a war with NATO and us all getting involved. So there are selfish reasons for us to want to end this war in an appropriate way and potentially help Ukraine to do so. But there is I think there's definitely a frustration with the British public in that they don't necessarily see it as we're helping Ukraine to help ourselves. They see it as we're helping Ukraine because we're being far too charitable. And when they can't see that their money is making a difference, if it was the case that we gave a bunch of money to Ukraine and we could see that was really helping them win the war, then people wouldn't mind so much. But when people have seen this stalemate going on for years and years, and then they see at home we've got this cost of living crisis, we don't seem to have money for anything. Rachel Reeves keeps putting up our taxes, saying there's no money in the back.
And they might not win the war.
I think there's this fatigue, and of course, with anything, it only trends in the news for a certain amount of time. When this war's been going on for so long now, people are kind of getting sick of it and are desperate to bring it to an end.
I think it's the length of time it's gone on. It's the sense that Zelensky isn't. He certainly. I know there's a lot of sort of Russian bot type stuff about Zelensky, always become a trillionaire since this. It's all nonsense, by the way. But nonetheless, he's not everybody's cup of tea in that respect. And as you rightly say, it's gone on a lot. It's, we've thrown God knows how many billions into Ukraine. It's still going on, and it looks like it might even end in Russia's favour. So with all of that in mind, but then, of course, if you take the Trump position, as he did with Venezuela and he's doing with Greenland, it's not really about America wants to own Greenland so it can set up a casino. It's about the...
He might set one up.
He might do, you never know. It's the kind of geopolitical implications of China and Russia as well in those areas. So there are security reasons, and, similarly, is that what we're doing with Ukraine? Is it just the same as Trump's doing with Venezuela? But, not the same manoeuvres, but for the same ultimate end. It's about security.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's two-part. I think, of course, Boris Johnson was the one leading the way on Britain's strong response to Ukraine when it first started.
Yep.
And I think that in Boris Johnson's case, he definitely had a really strong conviction that he really cared about the Ukrainian people and their sovereignty in their country. It wasn't just about British interests.
Yeah.
But I think there's no way that we would funnel so much money and so much help towards the Ukrainians if this wasn't about us and NATO as well.
Indeed. Chloe, stay with us. Lots more still to come. We'll talk about that drink driving, or the change to the drink drive limit. A major tightening up of the law. Do you support that? Sounds like it should work, but will it? Has it worked in Scotland? Does it work elsewhere? What about a total ban on alcohol? Is that not the ultimate answer? I'm told there are implications with that. Your stories in that respect as well. And will the world be a safer place in a year's time as a result of what is going on in America and Ukraine and boots on the ground? Goodness me, the list goes on. It is the 21st century. Who thought it would be like this? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
You get up in the morning, you put your big boy trousers on and you go out in the world, and there is risk involved in that. Do Do you think Britain was built on zero risk? Oh, let's not go to the other side of the world in a ship. We might all drown. There can't be no risk in life. Where is the point where you're going to stop us? Where is the point where it's going to stop? I'll tell you where the point is where it's going to stop. They're going to drinking alcohol is just going to become illegal. That's effectively what they're doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 22 minutes after 1 o'clock. Let's look at this drink driving alteration to the law. The government consulting on cutting the limit in England and Wales. The levels in Scotland are different. They're more on the European side of things. Alongside tougher penalties and new measures to curb drink driving and drug driving aim to sharply reduce road deaths. This is despite warnings from the pub trade and concerns raised by the Scotland experience. Look, on the face of it, Chloe Dobbs still with us, by the way. On the face of it, it always sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it? We're going to reduce the amount you can drink before you can drive a car. Well, what's not to like? But it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, of course, you've got to do a proper cost-benefit analysis of this, right? If it was the case that if you eliminate all risks you can from driving, then there are no cost to it, and then we would end up in a world where we just say, let's just ban driving so that nobody can crash at all, right? But in reality, we recognise there's a huge cost to that. That would shut down the economy, it'd stop people from moving around, and so on, right? And so you have to have the balance, right? If there was no issue restricting driving speed limits, for example, we'd have everyone just drive at 5 miles an hour everywhere, but that would of course come with a big cost. And the same goes with this, right? If it was the case that reducing people's ability to drink just meant that everybody's healthier, fewer people die and there's no cost to it, then fantastic, right? But the reality is that we've got a pub trade at the moment that is absolutely on its knees, really struggling. I mean, many of them shut down as a consequence of COVID and all the havoc that brought, and then after that having soaring energy bills, and then like the hikes in national insurance and minimum wage after last year's budget. They are really struggling, and the number that are closing down is crazy. This is probably not a good time for a restriction that potentially means that people having one strong pint puts them over the limit. I think there needs to be a balance had. I know you said there are a lot of cases where people they actually haven't had that much, but they don't realise they've gone over the limit. But I think there are also a lot of cases where people are driving because they are and crashing because they are way over the limit and just behaving recklessly. I mean, maybe a better approach, rather than to say shut down the pubs by restricting this to potentially less than a pint before you go over the limit, is maybe people can have their own sort of cheap breathalyzers. I don't know if that's easy to do, so that people can say after... I
think there are some cars that you can have them fitted so the car won't start.
Or something like that. So if people, I think a lot of people, they're not sure whether they're over the limit or not. If people just made a habit of every time I go to the pub, if I'm about to drive back after having a drink, I'm just going to quickly test myself and check, and if it's over the limit, I'm going to get a taxi, then maybe that's a better solution. Because I think the main issue is a lot of people just don't know, and the same amount of drink will have a different effect on different people.
Well, there's also that as well.
Proportion of alcohol in their bloodstream, right? So it's not the case that for everybody it's 1 pint.
But because you have to have, for evangelists and maybe some people who've been affected by drink driving, they've lost somebody very close to them. I can understand why those people would say you shouldn't drink anything. I get that instinctive thing. But there is also an argument about government overreach and what government should be allowed to legislate for. And if you get into that, look, road deaths in this country have fallen dramatically from 1972. 7,763 people died on the roads. In 2024, 1,602.
Huge drop.
It's a huge drop. Cars are safer, roads are safer. Fewer people drive than ever did before. But we're never going to stop madness or accidents, right? That's always going to be with us.
You're never going to stop it completely unless you say nobody drives at all. That's it. Just take all the roads off the car. But that would just, I mean, it would bring the economy and society to a halt. I mean, it's all right saying to people in London, you know, do not drive if you're having anything to drink. But the problem is, I mean, it's the rural pubs that are really concerned about this, because, I mean, I'm from Cornwall where there's not very much public transport. I understand that you can't really do anything or get anywhere without a car. And I think that it would be... If you say to a group of friends that want to go to the pub, okay, you guys can go to the pub, and the person driving can have one drink or so, then they're going to go out. But if it's the case that one person has to have their night, you know, they can't have a single drink, then I think that would really damage the pub trade potentially, and it's probably not worth it, given that, you know, with the figures that you've stated, this is probably not our #1 priority. If road deaths were absolutely through the roof at the moment, I'd say, okay, yeah, maybe this is something we really need to do.
Attributed to drink driving in particular, let's move to this story. Kemi Badenoch, she's calling for the sacking of the West Midlands police chief. This is after Israeli fans were barred from that Villa match last year, a decision police say was based on credible intelligence of serious disorder, but which sparks claims of anti-Semitism, also prompted a government-ordered review. West Midlands Police Chief Constable Craig Guilford insisted at the committee meeting yesterday that they didn't scrape Google to find reasons to ban fans. Let's have a listen.
It feels to us, from everything we've seen, that there was a need that you felt that you had to justify banning these fans, and that scraping was done to find a reason.
Right. Well, that's absolutely not the case. I'm really sorry if it comes across in that way. That was absolutely not the case. The information, the intelligence that we received, that we documented, and we've shared absolutely all of that with HMIC FRS very, very recently, was all gone through. The mistake that was made in terms of the West Ham was one individual doing one Google search because he couldn't find the reference because it wasn't there within the system.
Should this man be sacked? Kemi Badenoch thinks yes.
I think he should. We've had another revelation come out about the fact that potentially they knew that extremists were planning to arm themselves if those Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were to come and attend. Even with the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans not attending, I think that there were certainly a significant number of extremists out there on the streets. If any of those fans were to go, there were some of the Jewish community were bold and went down there with Israeli fans, and I mean I would have been terrified by them. You know, they were putting up signs saying, you know, if you see a Zionist, call the anti-terror hotline and call us and tell us where they are. And I think that there is a concern that the blame has been put on the Jewish community when actually the threat really came from certain extremists who would have hurt them. But the thing is that before this, what we had the Dutch authorities, because this ban came into effect after, you know, a bit of an issue in Holland there with a match that went on there. And the figures about what had happened was massively blown out of proportion by the West Midlands Police when, for example, they went to the Jewish community in the area to try and justify their ban. And you had the Dutch authorities come out and sort of one by one go through the reasoning of the West Midlands and say, we didn't tell them that, we didn't tell them that. For example, they massively overestimated the number of police officers that needed to be deployed in Holland to make the chaos in Holland. I'm not saying there wasn't any chaos and that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans did nothing wrong, but it was massively overplayed by the West Midlands Police, and whether that was just a mess up, incompetence, or they intentionally messed with the figures, I think someone's head has to roll. And I think that this guy has a lot to answer for.
And there wasn't, you know, in the lead up to this, I just remember us playing some clips of local community leaders, so Muslim community leaders, who were talking in, I thought, really quite disturbing and some, you know, unpleasant tones about, you know, this is our manor, you know, you don't come round here kind of thing. And I thought, what is this? What does he mean by our? Who are our when he says that? Is he talking about a religion? Is that what that sounded like he was? And there were a couple of people who kind of sang from that sort of hymn sheet. We didn't really get much from the police on them. Because I thought, and as you rightly say, when the match did take place, there were signs up, sort of essentially warning Jews to, go home, as it were.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that the authorities are scared to criticise the Muslim community in any way, because they are so worried about being labelled Islamophobic and racist, and so they know that they can just put the blame on the Jewish community, who are far more placid. They're unlikely to come round to your house with pitchforks and beat you up because you said something wrong. I'm not saying that all Muslims would do. Let me be absolutely clear. But when you hear of certain people who are more extreme in the Muslim community threatening people or saying, we're going to come out with arms if the Jewish community come out, that means that the police are going to be far more scared of them and will be far more willing to put the blame on, in this case, the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans.
Indeed. Chloe, we've hit the clock, but thank you. Good to see you. Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme. A bit of breaking news. The United States has carried out an operation to seize a Venezuelan-linked tanker. Officials say the US is carrying out an operation to seize the Venezuelan tanker Marinera, formerly known as Bella One. That's the latest from that. Expect more of those kind of stories relating to Venezuela. More comment from you if you want to drop us a voice note. 0344 499 1000. We've got two questions here, actually, to throw out. Will the world be a safer place in a year's time? I'm thinking about Ukraine. I'm thinking about Greenland and Venezuela and all that's going on over there. China, their incursion into God knows how many countries. And in a crunching gear change, are you in favour of the proposed drink drive limit to reduce it right down? Some are saying get rid of any kind of limit altogether. Thoughts on that as well? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 2. 25 to 2. On that issue of drink driving, Jack in Nottingham says, I got pulled over collecting my car the day after my father's funeral. Did not for 1 second think I was over the limit. Was pulled over coming out of a car park. I got an 18-month ban. I lost my job, which came with an offer of a managerial role, which lost an extra 12,000 pay rise, which would have been there. It felt like I'd lost my legs. Fortunately, I did get my licence back in March, and certainly will be more aware of the levels the day after heavy drinking. You see, that's the... Thank you, Jack, for that. I did ask for honesty on this. If you've ever been collared, what are the implications? Because I think they're... To me, to lose your car is horrific, and someone I know who recently lost their licence, the curtailing of their lifestyle is enormous. It is absolutely enormous. And the more of those kind of stories you hear, you might think people would go, well, what? Yeah. I mean, the idea of not being able to just pop somewhere to the supermarket, you know, down the road to see if everything's got to be either you've got to walk it, if you can't walk it, you've got to train it or cab it, whatever, wherever you go, it's expensive. And then, of course, when you do get your licence back, you've got heftier insurance because you've already been nicked for drink driving. That's on your record for God knows how long. So there's no good can come of this. But you have a sort of a sympathy with somebody who'd gone out the night before, left their car. So I can't drive because I've had a drink, so I go home, have a good old sleep, do the usual things at home. Later in the day, you go back to pick your car up, almost 24 hours later, in some cases. But you're over the limit. Now, that kind of feels slightly different from somebody who goes out and knocks back about 10 pints, jumps in their Ford Fiesta and goes nuts down the M6. That's a slightly different story, but the upshot, of course, legally is the same. You're a drunk driver and you'll be penalised for it. Your own stories on that, and will reducing it make a difference? And if it's going to make a difference, why not reduce it to zero so you can't have any drink? Well, one of the good reasons is that, you know, plenty of people can have half a lager or a glass of wine or something and then drive. That's currently legal, more or less. It can change depending on the person. So the pub industry, which is already suffering, almost on its knees, business rates and goodness knows what else, and staff, employee national insurance, minimum wage, the list goes on. They're being really hammered at the moment and they are uncomfortable with this proposal. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. And will the UK be a safer place in a year's time? Lines are open on all of those subjects, and if you want to drop us a voice note, it is the same number as well. Brad says the reduction in the drinking limit will only hit those who are already responsible and close numerous village pubs. Those who drive whilst drunk and drug drivers will just continue, says Brad. I think that's true. If you're of that mentality, it almost doesn't matter what rules or regs are brought in. You are still likely to get on the beer and drive your car. Now, Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have set out a more assertive, I think is the way to put it, European stance on global security. They've committed the UK and French troops to help secure Ukraine following any future peace deal.
We signed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future.
So would you support British boots on Ukrainian ground? Let's speak with Mesa Gifford, former British volunteer fighter in Syria. He is, of course, the author of Fighting Evil, the ordinary man who went to war against ISIS. Mesa, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. So, I mean, the basic question, as we've put it, should we support this move by Macron and Starmer? Is it a positive? Will it do anything? Should we endorse it?
I think we should endorse it, primarily because for many, many years, British forces under the umbrella of British Forces Germany were forward deployed in Germany to deter the Soviet Union. Now, we've got a strong history in the UK of forward deploying troops to deter adversaries. And in Ukraine, that's going to be something for the future. I mean, not only does this mean we will be able to help police Ukraine's skies with our aircraft, we'll also be able to train Ukrainian troops more effectively. We'll be able to build infrastructure for them that's been utterly decimated by Russian airstrikes. This is sort of crucial military infrastructure, I mean, and also be sort of the tip of the spear of a European response if something were to happen in Ukraine. But it shouldn't, because this would be a deterrent.
Indeed, and that's the idea. But of course, many will counter this and say, well, look, if the Russians wanted to have a go, even after a peace deal, you know, we've seen what's happened in the Middle East where, you know, there are still rockets and exchange of fire carry on even after some kind of ceasefire arrangement, then our troops will be put in clear danger, because what greater trophy for Putin than to, you know, pop off a couple of French or British soldiers?
Well, I don't think so. I think Putin is a lot more cautious than that. At the end of the day, British and French troops, a direct attack on them would be a direct attack on the UK and France, who are the two of us are the sort of largest powers in Europe in terms of our military expenditure and our ability to project power. It's not just our forces that would respond. This is not just a symbolic thing. This also is. It means that sort of American and German and other forces can come in behind us if there were to be a wide-scale attack on Ukraine that attacked our forces as well. So this is a sort of a major deployment that would deter Russia and genuinely help build security.
And backed by America, which of course is fairly crucial in these matters, more so than ever.
Oh, absolutely. They'll continue to provide intelligence, which is vital. I mean, it was American and British intelligence that actually warned the Ukrainians weeks in advance of the Russian plan to invade, despite the fact that Putin, right up to the day of the invasion, was saying that he wasn't going to invade. So it shows you how much you can trust him. But either way, US intelligence is vital for getting targets, informing the Ukrainians of the situation on the ground. With the power of the US behind us, I genuinely believe that, as I said, British and French forces will do a lot of good by being on the ground, building that infrastructure and creating that resilience.
We're in a strange place, aren't we, Mesa, in terms of the world we live in? I was talking earlier on when I was at school. I remember our primary school teacher saying you're the first generation never to experience war going on anywhere. I mean, there are a few scrapes here and there, but broadly speaking, I know what he meant. How times change, because here we are in the 21st century where if you'd followed the kind of general route of where the world might be at this stage, you'd think it would all, we'd be sitting around holding hands singing Kumbaya. Nobody hated anybody. Everyone got on really well. The religion, John Lennon, Imagine and all that old caper. That might be where we are right now. We're almost in reverse gear, some might say.
We are absolutely in reverse gear. I mean, we've almost gone back 50 to 100 years. Basically, we are now emerging into a world of the great power. And the concept of universal human rights, of freedom and equality that sort of took root in the West after the Second World War, they're under severe strain. The United States has basically said we're going to give up our position as the world's policeman and as the sort of leader of the free world. And instead, we're going to start projecting power in the same way that some of our adversaries do. Now, that's incredibly dangerous. It makes the world a lot more frantic, dangerous, unstable. And where Britain sits in all this, we have to start thinking about boosting our military expenditure. We have to invest. We have to be a lot more aggressive in pushing British interests abroad. So we need to change at home too.
I mean, and Trump was right, wasn't he? His mood music around Ukraine has been, we are there. Clearly, there are implications for America, but this is on European soil. I'd like to see the European countries do a little bit more, both in terms of what they spend on defence and the mood music around what their intentions might be. He's right on that point, wasn't he?
He's been right, and it's not just him that's been saying it. The Americans have been saying it for years. I mean, Britain has eroded our armed forces over the last few decades. It has been appalling what we have done to risk our stability and our security in the long term. We have to start thinking about creating mass in terms of our military, our current military. We have to start thinking about investing in new technology. We have to start promoting resilience at home. That's sort of stockpiling crucial equipment and minerals. And we need to start thinking more about a world that is not governed by the usual sort of peace and stability that we're so used to. So it's a more chaotic world, and we have to get used to that.
I mean, some would say, actually, if you are a big economy and a superpower, the likes of America, you should have an interest in world peace. That should be something that, because ultimately it would still benefit you. Being the world's policeman, I know it's a position that Donald Trump is clearly rowing back on a little bit, but that does come with being such a massive superpower.
It really does. Well, it's incredibly sensible for America to promote its interests abroad by sort of looking outwards. As Winston Churchill said, if we had to choose between Europe and the open sea, I always choose the open sea. Britain has always been a maritime nation. Our power has always been when we looked abroad. And the trouble with Donald Trump is he's an isolationist. And there's a long history of isolationism in American politics. His return to the Monroe Doctrine of protecting his his hemisphere is very much a signal of that isolation. So we've got to try and urge the Americans to take their responsibility seriously and do it ourselves as well.
Indeed. Mesa, great to have you on with us, sir. Thank you as ever. Mesa Gifford, former British volunteer fighter in Syria, went out there against ISIS, wrote a book about it as well, called Fighting Evil, the Ordinary Man Who Went to War Against ISIS. Thank you to him. Let's speak with Daniel Davis, Foreign Affairs analyst and retired US Army Lieutenant Colonel. Daniel Davis, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, just on the back of, as we were speaking with our last guest, you know, is the world a safer place? Is there a sense, you've been a military man all your life, you've seen it, you've been there, you've done it, you've got the T-shirt, you've seen different administrations, you've seen expenditure change, you've seen priorities change. Where do you sense we're at now at this stage of the 21st century compared to where we were a few years ago?
Well, listen, I mean, I think right off the top, you got to say that the so-called rules-based order is just shredded. What kind of everybody thought was stability. I mean, I grew up cutting my teeth during the Cold War, and then, you know, into adulthood after the fall of the Soviet Union. You know, and we thought it was the end of history, and now it was going to be this great world. And, you know, it didn't turn out that way. And I think that we really have to all be honest with each other and understand this is not all one side's fault. This has been a degradation really across the board, and we've seen a rise, especially here in the last 5 years or so, with a willingness to use force that should be alarming to every person on the planet, no matter what country you're from. And I would actually was listening to your previous guest there, and I heard him say something that I hear a lot of people say, which raised my eyebrows, that he said, you know, that Donald Trump right now is an isolationist. And I'm like, whoa. Look at what he's doing all over the planet with military force, and it's definitely not isolationist. You can certainly criticize him for what he's doing and where he's going, but, I mean, just look at Iran, Yemen, Nigeria, now Venezuela, possibly Colombia, possibly Iran again, etc. He's definitely not isolationist. And listen, you talk about rules-based order, or I was talking about that. Look what we did in Venezuela, which there is no rules that cover that. I mean, we violated any kind of international laws that there were. You see Russia taking matters into its own hands with Ukraine, not taking any kind of international orders. They acted in what they perceived as their self-interest. And when we get a country, or world rather, that is governed by the rule of force, and that it's based on what I think right here, and there's no more, you know, rules-based of anything that anyone recognizes, then we're heading in dangerous territory that whatever you may do will cause a commensurate reaction from the other side, and vice versa, until we find ourselves in another global conflict, which could be catastrophic for mankind.
Indeed. I mean, they're very strong words, Daniel. But of course, the American position, or the White House presidential position, as I understand it, and I'll just say this in kind of layman's terms, is that, yes, like similarly with Greenland, it's unconventional. It's not in the rule book. It's unusual. But, man, it has to happen. It has to happen because we've got China, who are making incursions and subjugations all over the place, including Greenland, of course. So the wider geopolitical reason for it outweighs the unconventional nature of what America has done. Is that a fair defence of Mr. Trump and Venezuela and Greenland?
I don't think so. Sorry, I have to disagree, I suppose.
Oh, fair point.
Because unconventional is fine. I'm an unconventional. I was trained as a cavalryman, you know, and our whole gig was throw you into chaos and try to figure it out and set the stage for those coming in behind you. So I'm actually very comfortable in chaos, and sometimes you need to break up things because you're moribund or whatever, you're moving in a bad direction. But it also has to be with wisdom. And when instead we're going right now, as I see it, especially from the United States perspective, there is no thought put behind it. There's no strategy behind it. There's just actions. We don't like Maduro, go get him. We don't like Iran, we don't like what they're doing, go get them. Now maybe we see Greenland, we want what they've got, go get it. You see, it's not even just in our hemisphere. It's not even just in the Middle East. Now he could be looking into Europe, no matter what the conventions is, no matter what the rules are, even among our side. And if you throw all the rules out and all the convention, then what you have is chaos, because nobody knows what you stand for, and a lot of people could be fearing you. So I think it's not good to
that is a really good point. And on that point, just a final note, Daniel, is the arguments around Greenland, is that even more wobbly, shall we say, than the arguments around Venezuela? What do you feel about that? Because we heard in the last 24 hours, of course, of potential use of force as well.
Right. I mean, you have Stephen Miller on Fox News last night.
Saw that.
Just enthusiastically talking everything short of saying we're going to take it by force. And when pressed numerous times over and over, and also on CNN, will you take use of force against a NATO ally off the table? And he adamantly would not do it. And this idea, this claim that we need Greenland for our national security is just self-evidently untrue. We've never had Greenland in the sense that he's talking about, and our security has never been at risk. It is at risk now. So I don't even know theoretically what he thinks our security would be improved by, but I do see that it would be a real rupture and potential. I'm talking even in NATO. You take action like this, it's not clear that NATO itself is going to survive.
Yeah. Although many would say, the Chinese are already making incursions in Greenland, so there is every reason why Mr. Trump wants to...
Economically.
Indeed, and the minerals and all that goes with it. I get that. We will watch with interest. Daniel, let's speak again, sir. It's great to have you on. Daniel Davis, he is US Army, retired US Army Lieutenant Colonel, whichever one you fancy, foreign affairs analyst too. Your thoughts on what he said, 0344 499 1000. We're going to get a Danish voice as well. I think it's about time we did on Greenland in a couple of moments. Over to you as well. Lines are open. This is Talk.
You get up in the morning, you put your big boy trousers on and you go out in the world, and there is risk involved in that. Do you think Britain was built on zero risk? Oh, let's not go to the other side of the world in a ship, we might all drown. There can't be no risk in life. Where is the point where you're going to stop us? Where is the point where it's going to stop? I'll tell you where the point is where it's going to stop. They're going to drinking alcohol is just going to become illegal. That's effectively what they're doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. The other element, of course, to global affairs is what is going on with Greenland. The White House says acquiring Greenland is a US national security priority. Our previous military guest said that's nonsense. It's not ruled out using military force as one option. This is disturbing stuff, isn't it? Prompting a strong rebuke from European allies and Denmark, who insist Greenland belongs to its people, must be decided only by Denmark and Greenland. The Danish president has urged that the Trump threat must be taken seriously. Let's have a listen to her speaking through an interpreter.
Firstly, I believe that the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is including our NATO and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War.
That's what she says. Let's speak with Stina Jakobsen, Denmark correspondent for Reuters, based in Copenhagen. Stina, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Hey. Hi.
Nice to have you. Have you applied for your American passport yet?
Not yet, but maybe I should get that in order soon, yeah?
Yeah, there'll be a big old queue, apparently, according to Mr. Trump. I mean, this is... I say that quite lightly because in any other world, this would be satire, right? This would be something we go, oh, right, yeah, right, a guy's just come along and said, I'm going to take over that piece of land. But that's literally where we're at. And whatever the reasoning might be from the Oval Office, this has to be filed under the category of utterly extraordinary.
It does indeed, yeah. No, I think, I mean, over the past year or so, we've heard like repeated threats, but obviously these aren't going away. And, you know, as was also mentioned by the Prime Minister, apparently Trump means this, right? In what sort of way he would like? Would it be militarily? Would it be some kind of free trade association? What is their plan? We don't know. But for especially, of course, people living in Greenland, that is it is scary stuff.
His reasoning seems to be, and we did have another military expert on yesterday who said, look, you know, this is unconventional, but this debate about Greenland is not an America's running of it or ruling of it, whichever way you like to look at it. It's not entirely new. It goes back decades. Other presidents have talked about this in the past, and the reasoning is more of a geopolitical reason. It's not that Donald Trump wants to build a casino and one of his gold-plated hotels. This is about the Chinese. It's about the Russians, and therefore America has to take this very seriously. Is that a defence that is playing out in any kind of positive way in Denmark?
I don't really think so. I mean, the thing is that the US already have kind of unlimited military access to Greenland.
True.
Via an agreement that goes back many decades. I think it was signed in 1951 or something. So I think everyone is a bit puzzled about what it is really that they want. Trump has mentioned a few times that there are lots of Russian and Chinese vessels around Greenland. Danish authorities said yesterday that is not correct. And then the foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark requested a meeting with Marco Rubio to try to sort of correct some of these misunderstandings. So I think everyone here is asking themselves, what is it that he really wants, right? And I will not try to answer that because I don't think that will be for me to do. But
yeah, well, I don't even know if Donald Trump, based on what you've said, I don't even know if he fully knows why he needs it. I mean, after all, he did say he also wanted Canada, if you remember, when he first took office the other year. Just give us your sort of journalistic instinct on this, Stina. Where do you think this story will be in a year's time?
That is an excellent question. I mean, it did start almost precisely a year ago, right? And to be honest, I'm not sure it has moved that much in a year. I mean, there hasn't been any specific action yet from the US side, but things can move fast and suddenly things can happen. But
have you ever met anybody in Denmark who wants America to own Greenland?
I have not, no. I think maybe some Greenlandic people do think that it makes sense to make business with the US, to have a US military presence. But I think the overwhelming majority of Greenlanders also, they want to be Greenlanders. They don't want to be a part of Denmark either. It's important to note in this context.
I was going to say there is another narrative as well, which we could talk about. Stina, great to have you on. Thank you. Stina Jakobsen, Denmark correspondent for Reuters, based in Copenhagen. Over to you, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up on 3 minutes after 2 o'clock, there's so much stuff going on at this end. I don't know where to start. Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. What a marriage made in heaven that is. They've set out a more assertive European stance on global security. They are committing the UK and French troops to help secure Ukraine following any future peace deal. Straightforward, would you support British boots on Ukrainian soil? This would be after a peace deal. Doesn't mean it comes without risks, obviously. And the broader question, really, of the weird world we found ourselves in: Venezuela, Greenland, this, the Middle East, Israel, Gaza. The list goes on. Will the world be a safer place in a year's time? Is this just something we're kind of going through? And then we'll all come out the other side next Christmas and go, oh, what a terrible start. But it's all looking good right now. Thoughts on that as well. Also this afternoon, the government is consulting on cutting the drink drive limit. This is for England and Wales. Scotland have already taken this move to European levels, along with tougher penalties and new measures to curb drink driving and drug driving as well. This is obviously a bid to reduce road deaths. On the face of it, that's clearly a good thing. But is there more to this story, and would you support it? Are you in favour of this proposed drink driving limit? And Kemi Badenoch has demanded the West Midlands police chief to be sacked over the Aston Villa Israeli fan ban amid anti-Semitism claims and a government review. It was all hotting up over there, as we reported yesterday at the Select Committee. Your thoughts, and of course more guests to come on those stories. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news, 0344 499 1000. This comes from Brad in Cambridge, who says, asking that question, will the world be a safer place in a year's time? And if you look at what's going on, some suggesting it's going to get a whole lot worse. There could be carnage out there. This is not a great time for planet Earth. Brad says, if you look back through history, the first half of a new century has invariably brought turmoil and disasters, which seem to settle after coming to a head. I'm not predicting anything, just pointing out a pattern. Good point, Brad. And when you say the first half of a century, does that mean we've got another 24 years of turmoil before it starts to settle down? By which stage quite a lot of people will no longer be around. I'd quite like it to happen by about July, would be quite nice. So no one is at war with anyone over anything at any time. And it is a bit crazy, isn't it, the concept of war? I know it's a bit of sort of catch-22 scenario, this. But ultimately, this is about just groups of other human beings sitting around a table and agreeing on something. It's not groups of scientists trying to find a cure for cancer. It's not attempting to get through physics, immovable object. It's not any of that. You're not trying to, invent a transportation device that can take you by the mere thought of your mind to another country. Now, this is just literally another human being sitting down with another one going, should we not do this fighting thing? Yeah, let's not do that. It's a bit rubbish, isn't it? That's it. I know, it's all rather simple. Let's move to this story. Big story, this, of course. The government consulting on drink driving, the drink drive limit for England and Wales. This story never fully goes. There's always a discussion about it from time to time. It's been many, many years since they've fundamentally changed the law. And, of course, this would mean reducing it so that it reduces road deaths. That's the theory behind it. However, there is much more to this story. Let's firstly get a word from Edmund King, president of the AA. Edmund, good afternoon to you. It is a kind of story, as I mentioned there. When you say it out loud, should we reduce drink drive limits to save road deaths, then it's like a no-brainer, right? Well, of course we should. But there is more to this story.
Yeah, indeed there is, Ian. I mean, firstly, drink is an issue in 17% of road deaths. And for drivers, 20% of those killed, drink is an issue. So it is an issue.
Yeah.
But the thing about limits is interesting, because in Scotland, they reduced the limit to 50 from 80 in about 2014, so about more than 10 years ago. And actually, the evidence in terms of road safety is pretty inconsistent. It doesn't look to have made a massive difference there in Scotland, which is interesting. Other European countries do show reductions in death by about 10%, 12%. So there are other studies. I mean, I guess lowering it from 80 to 50, we are a bit of an outlier. If you look at the rest of Europe, most of Europe has a 50 limit. Northern Ireland was going to look to change to 50 anyway. Scotland, as we say, has already changed. I think the problem with the 80 limit, Ian, if I'm honest about it, is some people drink to the limit, and that is so dangerous because you don't know how strong is that beer, how big is that wine glass, and it's all about alcohol, but it's also about metabolic rates, and your mood can even affect how you ingest alcohol. So we always say at the AA, look, if you're going to drive, don't drink. If you're going to drink, don't drive. And obviously that is the safest thing. And in Scotland, it's interesting, the kind of argument, has it affected the pubs? Well, pubs have done other things. They put on low alcohol drinks that have got much, much better in the last 5 years.
Yeah, true.
They've kind of promoted designated driver. So maybe the guy or the lady that decides to drive, they get free non-alcoholic drinks. They could do that, or put on taxis and other things. So I think, overall, we'll look at the consultation, we'll look at all the questions, but I think overall moving to 50 does seem to make sense.
Is there anywhere around the world, to your knowledge, Edmund, I want to spring this one on you, that has a zero tolerance where you can't drink at all?
The problem with zero, and why most countries don't, is that you do get alcohol in some other things. There are some fermented fruit juices, for example, that would have alcoholic traces. And also, if you had a glass of wine or something the night before, there still might be traces. So that's why normally they put a limit. The lowest normally is 20 milligrams. And that's something the government are also floating here for new drivers or learner drivers within 2 years. So you might actually have two limits. You might have a 20 limit for new drivers and then a 50 limit, across the board. And I guess the rationale is new drivers are so experienced that any level of alcohol would have an adverse effect on them.
Indeed. Edmund, thank you for your time. Appreciate it as ever. Edmund King is the president of the AA. Thank you to him. I mentioned that it's not a straightforward debate, this, because there are issues, and it was touched on there by Edmund King. Michael Kill is the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association. Michael, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Of course, nobody wants to see anybody dying as a result of getting drunk and then taken to a car or hitting somebody while they're taking to a car. But there is another side to this, of course, and that is that people can drink responsibly, and the average person, who goes out for a drink at the moment in a pub may drink nothing at all. They might have a pint, and for the rest of the night they drink Coca-Cola. That seems to be the pattern. I think for most rational people, it's certainly what I would do in those situations. Just give us, though, an inkling as to what the big concerns are in hospitality in the nighttime industry.
Well, thank you. And I'll kind of echo where Edmund is. I mean, look, everyone agrees that safety comes first, and no one in the nighttime economy wants to see lives lost because of drink driving. I mean, our sector has worked really hard over many years. We increasingly promote responsible drinking, designated driver schemes, alcohol-free options, which are now really a norm. And we've already seen sort of 25% of the market really consume low alcohol or no alcohol sort of drink options. So we're already shifting towards that sensible drinking, responsible drinking position. The challenge we have is that practical impact, that particularly for pubs and venues within rural or suburban areas where things like public transport are very limited or simply doesn't exist late at night. And when we're telling people to either not to drive at all after a drink, and there's no viable alternative, and they either risk people staying at home or making people making poor choices, which could cost lives. So there is a concern, and there is this really important thing that we need to achieve a level of balance, and we need to work towards creating a stronger transport infrastructure so that people have got that alternative to get home, particularly for those rural and suburban areas which are probably exposed in this instance.
I mean, as Edmund was saying, the variety of choice in pubs and bars now is huge. I've lost count of the amount of times I've gone out with a mate who voluntarily, even if they're not driving, has gone for a zero Guinness because they claim it's of all those non-alcoholic drinks that Guinness have got it absolutely pitch perfect. But that does seem to become a thing now, and people do it for all sorts of reasons, not just because of the driving thing. They just like it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we are in a growing health-focused environment, particularly with youth culture, who are very conscious day to day on what they put into their bodies. You know, provenance is a really important thing. You know, all of these things play a part in it. The key thing is arming the businesses around with the right infrastructure to support people getting home safely, but also making them aware of all of those options to ensure that the staff and management are fully behind these initiatives to sort of drive forward. It's like you say, we're not against this position. What we are concerned about is people making poor choices once we get to that point, if there are no available options, particularly in some of those environments where the transport infrastructure is just limited or non-existent. And in some cases, that's in towns and cities, sadly, at certain points in the evening.
Indeed. On that point, Michael, thank you very much to you. Michael Kill is the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association. Over to you. Your overarching view, if you like, of the kind of idea of reducing how much you're allowed to drink before you get into a car. The zero limit doesn't quite work, and that's acknowledged pretty much around the planet. And if you've been nabbed and you got nicked and you weren't some reckless half-wit that just thought, I'll get absolutely K-lied and well, you might have been, by the way. I'm happy to hear from a reckless half-wit, always am. But it may just be, as we've heard from many people so far, that this was, you know, the next day thing is often the way people get collared, still gets treated the same. If it reads you're over the limit, you might have had a night's sleep, you might have felt absolutely fine, you've had your breakfast, you've had a shower, you've even gone to collect your car from where you left it the night before because you didn't want to drink drive and still got nicked. What I'm interested in, which I often think are perhaps the best kind of examples of putting people off drink driving, are when you hear of people who've been through that and what it did to their life to lose their car, because you often lose your livelihood as well as losing your car. And, of course, all that goes with it as well. You might lose a partner as well. I mean, you might be with someone who goes, I don't want to go out with a drink driver, and they leg it too. Everything's got. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Ashley is down in London. What are you thinking, Ashley? Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. I just think that, I was listening to Chloe speaking, and I just think that I think we've got to look at this not as worrying about the pub landlords. There's ways of getting to the pub and back. I think that the kids, you've got to start somewhere with this type of education again and making people realise, and these kids realise, but that actually it's not acceptable. And actually, forget the pub landlords at the moment and think about the people that may have got killed by someone who has had a drink the night before and didn't realise they're drunk. So I think we've got to, I can have sympathy on both sides to a degree. The thing I don't understand is they're going all out on drinking, but from my perspective, when I'm walking around and seeing the kids and getting out their cars, it isn't the drink that I can smell, it's the drugs. And I think that's a far greater concern at the moment for the younger generation, that they're jumping in the cars, either nitrous oxiding up with the balloons, or seriously, I'm just literally walking at the moment. I'm walking back to the high street. I walked past someone's car, quite young lad, probably 20, right, and stunk, absolutely stunk of weed. Now, I understand making drinking completely unacceptable, and I get that, and I think it's not a bad thing to start with the young in that respect, so they learn going forward more education. But the drugs just don't seem to get in. The government are not sitting there going, well, we need to handle the smoking of marijuana exactly the same way. These kids are smoking. A lot of people are smoking it like people do with cigarettes. So it's not on a small scale. And the effects that has on those drivers, they appear to think it doesn't matter because we don't drink, so we're smoking.
Yeah. From what I can gather, that seems to be the bigger problem these days.
I think it's
certainly in terms of numbers.
Yeah, I do, and I just think that there's never a right or wrong time to bring in certain rules that protect people, and the idea of this is to protect people. You're always going to. It's like bringing in a 20-mile. My whole area. I live in Ilford, and unfortunately, the area is being. They've just gone out to consultation. Literally every single road's going to be 20 miles an hour because there's some accidents that have happened. But the reality is that those accidents that have happened because people are driving 50, 60 mile an hour in a 30. Do you think those people are ever going to stop doing that? They're not.
Yeah, you see, that's it, isn't it? There's always going to be, if someone, it doesn't matter what limitations or what laws you put in place, if somebody's hell-bent on drinking or taking drugs before getting behind the wheel, they're still going to do it. On that point, I have to stop there, Ashley. Thank you. Good one to kick us off with, 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on this from David.
I just want to touch base really on the new drink laws coming into effect, or potentially. I'm a driver. I drive all day and night pretty much on the roads. I see a lot of horrendous, horrific accidents, usually some that lead to fatalities. And many of the causes are reckless driving, under the influence of drugs. My personal opinion should be a blanket zero tolerance, full stop. I'm a father of two. My partner's a mother of two. We want our children to live. You know, we want to live as humans. I want to live. You know, I want to live till a very old age. I don't want to be killed by anybody under the influence of alcohol or drugs. There should be a blanket zero tolerance across all forms. And then it's down to the individual human to make the necessary adjustments to their life.
David, thank you very much for that. You want to drop us a voice note? Easy way to bypass the queues, 0344 499 1000. We're going to take a short pause. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
You get up in the morning, you put your big boy trousers on and you go out in the world, and there is risk involved in that. Do you think Britain was built on zero risk? Oh, let's not go to the other side of the world in a ship, we might all drown. There can't be no risk in life. Where is the point where you're going to stop us? Where is the point where it's going to stop? I'll tell you where the point is where it's going to stop. They're going to drinking alcohol is just going to become illegal. That's effectively what they're doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Thank you to Dave Taylor on Twitter. X, who says, Ian, twice now your station has had Tom Tugendhat on and explained that there is apparently a post-World War II treaty with Denmark that the USA can occupy Greenland for America's defence. Now, I know Tom was on with Jeremy Kyle this morning on the Breakfast Show, but I didn't hear all of the I didn't hear that bit. I'm going to take a guess here. Is the agreement that if it was needed, America can utilise Greenland for defence, as distinct from taking it over and running the whole thing? So if there was an imminent threat coming, obviously, from Russia, but maybe China, then America is allowed to park its tanks on the lawn in Greenland. They already have defence capabilities to a certain level. So in the event of a potential invasion or threat, they could do that rather than take it over. That's my only guess based on the question that Dave sent in. Another David Smith says, Ian, just because someone's had a drink, it doesn't mean the drinking was the cause of any accident. People stroke victims perceive that they were drunk, but that is not the case, as the person that has had the drink might be the victim of a collision. It's a really good point. It is, and of course, you could, if you're not over the limit, then that's fine. But if you are a tiny bit over the limit, even though the accident's not your fault. I mean, I would imagine there's probably quite a lot of people involved in accidents. It turned out they were a bit over the limit, but the accident was not caused by them. So another interesting angle. On security, are we or will the UK and the world be a safer place this time next year? Matthew is in Warrington. There's a lot going on, Matthew, with Ukraine, Greenland, Venezuela, Middle East, Iran. The place is falling apart. What are you making of it all?
I listened to PMQs earlier on, and Starmer just stood there, and he's going on about the coalition of the Palestine approval willing a lot, and you get this. He hasn't got a clue. You get that certain feeling, stand there and imbibe a bit of white paper, like Chamberlain did, saying, "Well, I've just been to Berlin, and Hitler said we won't invade Poland." Oh, okay, and you know that. It's just virtue signaling. He's got no. He can say what he wants. Putin and Trump dictate what goes on.
But Trump is supporting this, though.
Well, he will do just to keep him on side. But Putin's already said that he's not going to have the United Kingdom or NATO forces in Ukraine. It's not going to happen. That's the whole thing about it. That's why he's attacking Ukraine, because he doesn't want them being in NATO. He wants to bring back the USSR.
But of course, a European country is allowed, or other European countries are allowed to defend, or at least, I mean, this would be after a peace deal, of course. This isn't like next week. So if there's a peace deal, presumably Putin's happy, Zelensky's happy, that's all done. This would be a peacekeeping, whatever phrase you want. They'll be there as a security backup, because Zelensky, of course, has constantly said, I need some kind of backup. You think Putin will see that as a red flag?
I think hell will freeze over before Putin will submit to Europe. He might have an Asian force in there, some kind of United Nations. But what we're going to do there is going to be like another Yugoslavia. It'll just fall dead in the water.
But wouldn't some of those? I mean, there will be people who disagree, but there seems to be quite a lot of people. And I know we're talking about world leaders here, so they're not. It doesn't mean they're all right, but many people are suggesting this is the best way to move forward with a backstop of security for Ukraine.
I can't see it happening. I can't see being the peace in Ukraine at the moment, because if they'd have a bit of a ceasefire now, why they discuss peace talks. No, that's what normally happens. We go, okay, we'll pull back for a month, give our troops a rest, and we'll sit at the table and have a chat. You know, while they were talking, he's still bombing Ukraine. He's still attacking them, and they're still attacking Russia. So there's no intention for it to stop. And then you've got Trump on about annexing Iceland, which, you know, that's his prerogative. I think will he do it? I don't know. I know he wants more troops in there. I don't know if it's just trying to put the willies up the NATO, or he wants to get out of NATO. He might want to get rid of NATO and renegotiate some other a new
that could be
North
true.
Atlantic treaty.
Or is he just coming to a not for the first time, but is the realization that China are about to pretty much take over the world economically? I mean, the car industry is a great example of that, and that will affect America. It'll affect all sorts of places. Is he roostering? Is he kind of puffing his chest and saying, right, we've got a battle on here, and although the battle is primarily economic, we've got to show that America is a growing concern, because if we don't, we'll be walked over?
Well, China put Trump in the corner last time he was in power, and he's obviously had 4 years to sit and think about it and put a plan together, and he's come out fighting back at China. He knew exactly what he was doing with all this tariffs on imports, and he thought, I'll hit him with it. I don't have to do it with mighty force. I don't have to put all I'll just tax them where it hurts. We'll stop buying their goods, because that pulls the noose around the neck on them financially, and they know that. And then moving, obviously he sent a big signal out when he bombed Iran. He did that mine buster. That sent that put Iran in its place.
Yep.
And now look at where Iran are. And so he's just got in and he's took the Venezuelan president out. So Putin and the Chinese president are going, you know what, this guy's been a bit of business here. We need to just rein it in, because
I think I sense, and I don't say this with any qualification in this respect, Matthew, but it is instinctively sense that that's what it is. It's kind of a certain amount of showboating going on. Listen, I've got to move, Matt. Thank you for that. Ben is in Essex on a similar point about global safety. What are you making of it all, Ben? Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon, Ian. I think that next 5 years we're probably going to see more of this. I think it's definitely saber rattling with these world leaders. And I think, the Americans are definitely trying to, show a force. I think Trump's definitely doing a bit of that. And in some ways, I get why Venezuela could be a risk, and that,
Sure.
the drugs that come from there. But I don't know what is in hold for us in Europe. I think we're only going to get weaker and probably taken over or disintegrated into nothingness if we carry on with this ECHR and whoever else is pulling the strings of these politicians. And it's a real shame. I mean, as a democratic nation, and I understand international law, the world's changing very, very quickly. And I think you see what Trump's done with Venezuela, but look what Russia's doing to Ukraine, and look at China have been flirting with Taiwan for ages, haven't they? But in some ways, we haven't had. Look at Trump and Blair, Afghanistan, Iraq, 20 years, trillions of pounds, people getting killed. Send in the Black Hawks, 45 minutes, do what we have to do, job done.
Yeah.
There's a debate there. I'm not saying.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah. I wonder that all the time about all sorts of characters around the world, and I think surely you could get rid of this bloke.
I mean, Starmer, was going smash the gangs. Why isn't he going over to France with the military and smashing them? Macron. I mean, he wouldn't dare.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? In a world where we're talking about security, our borders are still wide open. Isn't that a bit weird? But hey-ho, we live in strange times. Ben, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Will the UK, will the world be a safer place a year from now? There's a lot kicking off right now. Is it some of it coming to a head? You look at what's happening in Venezuela. This was a dictatorship, a horrendous one at that, as if there's any good ones, but you take the point. Could Venezuelans suddenly realise, actually, we've got our freedom back? It's much better. Iran. I mean, what is going on out there? Will Tehran fall? There's nothing on the table. There's no opposition. What happens there? But could it turn out to be better? So, yeah, there's a lot of scuffles, a lot of jip and hassle going on all over the place, a lot of threats happening too. But will it all turn out for the common good? 0344 499 1000. The other story running parallel with this afternoon is that of drink driving. The government proposal, or they're looking at the idea of reducing the drink drive limit. Good idea? Bad idea? Are there nuances here and unintended consequences? Let's get a word on this. A voice note from Dave. Kevin.
What's the point in increasing or decreasing the drink drive limit, whichever way it goes, if we haven't got sufficient traffic police on the roads already to enforce the laws we've got? Instead of changing the law, how about funding the police a bit better?
Great point. Can't argue with that. Kevin, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. It's 2:30. Brief pause. Don't be going anywhere. We're back right after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We were just saying about how much foreign affairs news is out there. Even having worked in newsrooms my entire adult life, never not done this job as a fully fledged adult, as it were. I've never known a time when there's been so much foreign news around, but also I still wonder, you think, well, if there wasn't these, what would the big stories be if there was no Trump-connected story? Nothing going on in terms of Greenland or what's happening in Israel and Gaza. All of those, if they disappeared, what would the agenda look like? And it's something no journalist can ever answer that. Even working at the coalface, everybody has their pet projects and pet ideas of, you know, every day. I get people on social media contact me and say, why are you not talking about this? Some people just offer it up as a good news story, and it may sometimes we'll take it up and go, actually, yeah, there is a good story there. But other times, you know, what one person prioritises is different to what another person prioritises. So for many people, talking about foreign affairs is of no interest at all, despite the huge geopolitical implications of it. And by the way, we mentioned about the Americans intercepting an oil tanker. It's a slightly confused picture. So this is and this happened in the Atlantic, but it was in European waters. So there's lots of elements to this. Briefly, what seems to have happened is it's a Venezuelan oil tanker, but it had a Russian flag on it, which was there, we understand, with the permission of Russia, so that the US wouldn't invade it. So that's why it was originally being called by some a Russian oil tanker, but in fact it's a Venezuelan tanker, but the Russians let them stick a Russian flag on it because they thought that'll be fine. So the Russians working in cahoots with Venezuela, is that what we extrapolate from that? Russia then asked America, you know, please don't attack it. We understand also one of our own planes, an RAF plane, was responsible for spotting it on a general spying mission of some kind. Man alive. See what I mean about foreign news? That story is all over the place. Started off as Venezuelan, became Russian for half an hour, was spotted by the RAF in the Atlantic but in European waters, and now is Venezuelan again. That's as much as we know. 0344 499 1000. I also want to go back to the Kemi Badenoch story, who's calling for the sacking of the West Midlands police chief. This is after Israeli fans were barred from that Villa match last year, a decision police say was based on credible intelligence of serious disorder, but it sparked claims of anti-Semitism, of course, prompting a government-ordered review. West Midlands Police Chief Constable Craig Guilford insists at the committee meeting yesterday they were not just going out looking through Google to find a reason to ban fans. Let's have a listen.
It feels to us, from everything we've seen, that there was a need that you felt that you had to justify banning these fans, and that scraping was done to find a reason.
Right. Well, that's absolutely not the case. I'm really sorry if it comes across in that way. That was absolutely not the case. The information, the intelligence that we received, that we documented, and we've shared absolutely all of that with HMIC FRS very, very recently, was all gone through. The mistake that was made in terms of the West Ham was one individual doing one Google search because he couldn't find the other, he couldn't find the reference because it wasn't there within the system.
It is a confused picture. Danny Shaw, policing, crime and justice commentator, is with us, former advisor to the Home Office as well. Danny, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year too. I mean, it was a slightly bizarre committee moment yesterday to have the whole head honchos of the police there as well, and MPs around the table, almost one by one, picking off holes in what they saw as a story where we weren't quite being told the complete truth. That seems to be at the base of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit conflicted about it in some ways, Ian, because I think the police did have a difficult job. There's no doubt about that. This fixture, was always going to be contentious and difficult to police because of the background of the war in Gaza and the very strong community feelings that there were in the West Midlands and a reputation that Maccabi Tel Aviv had. There's no doubt about that. Police were in a difficult position about how to facilitate the match. But to actually ban away supporters, I remember when I heard about it at the time, and I was staggered because I couldn't remember that happening. No. I couldn't remember that happening because of police advice in the many years that I've been reporting on this, and indeed going to football matches myself. Usually it's, if away fans are banned, it comes from UEFA. And because the club or the fans have done something, so there had to be some really, really good intelligence, I think, for police to justify that.
Yeah.
And only now do we learn that there was some intelligence, there was some alarming intelligence, not about the Maccabi fans. I mean, we'll come to that in a minute. But about concerns that the local community would arm themselves according to high confidence intelligence, which in police speak means they had great confidence that this intel was reliable. But this is the first we've learned about it at the committee hearing yesterday. Yeah. But if you get that intelligence that local people are going to cause trouble to visiting fans, you don't ban the away fans.
No, and that seems curious. And, I would also add on to that, Danny, that there were, some community leaders in that area putting out videos beforehand, sort of saying, not suggesting they were going to kick off and create havoc, but there was a sort of a sense of some of these community leaders were saying, this is our territory, this is our place. And I was surprised that they sort of got a bit of a free pass. And as you rightly say, now we are learning there might have been more to those videos than we first thought.
Yeah, and because the initial sort of reporting of this was around what threat did Maccabi Tel Aviv pose.
Yeah.
There was one phone call between police commanders in Amsterdam, where the Israeli club had played a game against Ajax Amsterdam a year previously, and there had been a lot of trouble not just involving football fans, but people in Amsterdam as well. There'd been one phone call between West Midlands Police and the Dutch police, it seems. That wasn't minuted, so there are no notes of that. It is disputed what the Dutch police told West Midlands Police. West Midlands Police sort of painted a really sort of dangerous picture of what had gone on. The Dutch police said, no, it wasn't quite like that. Then there was this Google search because the police were looking to see what other games Maccabi Tel Aviv had played. And one officer who was doing the research Googled when was the last time Maccabi Tel Aviv played in the UK, and it came up, oh, they played West Ham. And he put that in a report. Well, they never played West Ham. It was some erroneous search, probably AI generated, and yet it found its way into a police report. Now, that is the kind of thing that really undermines confidence in the police's capability and its ability to do their job, because actually some of the evidence, particularly that given by the Assistant Chief Constable Mike O'Hara, I thought was very good. I thought he was very convincing in the evidence that he gave. But then you get these other issues, the Google search, the failure to reveal this intelligence, the fact that they said they consulted Jewish groups and it appears that they hadn't before announcing the ban. So it does leave the Chief Constable in a precarious position.
I was going to say, is his job safe, Danny?
I think it's hanging by a thread at the moment. If you dismiss a chief constable, that's a very, very big step to take. It rarely happens. It only usually happens because of misconduct or some allegations, and there's an investigation going on into personal conduct or behaviour or something like that. Very rarely is it over something like this. So it's a big step to take. It's in the gift of the Police and Crime Commissioner, who's Simon Foster, a Labour PCC, or the Home Secretary could use her powers under the 1996 Police Act. That's very, very rarely used. I think what Shabana Mahmood will do is wait to see the outcome of a review that she set up by the watchdog, the policing watchdog, HMIC FRS. We'll wait to see what that comes up with before deciding whether or not she has to sort of pull the trigger on Craig Guilford, who's the Chief Constable.
Indeed. We will watch with interest. Danny, thank you very much indeed. Danny Shaw, policing and crime journalist and commentator. Thank you to him. Bit of breaking news. We're now hearing the US has seized a second vessel. This happened in the Caribbean, so the previous one in the Atlantic, in European waters, but it's a second vessel that has been taken. So we know about the first one, which was all sorts of controversy going on. But this is a second vessel intercepted, was operating in international waters, conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. They say the US Coast Guard is escorting it to to the US for final disposition. They're certainly very busy over there in the high seas at the moment looking for iffy vessels. They've got 2 so far, and it's only 2:45. Let's go to Robert in Hertfordshire. Back to that issue of, international security. Robert, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
First of all, Happy New Year.
You too.
As my dad used to say, I hope your landlord drops down dead tomorrow.
Why is that?
That's an old Cockney saying, when you wish someone well.
Oh, I see, yeah. I get it. I like it. Yeah, I get the spirit of it. Yeah. Got a nice landlord, though. That's the only trouble.
I just quickly had another one. When it's freezing cold like this, he used to say, if you're not wearing a coat this weather, you ain't got one.
Love that.
Right, it's a good one, that. I use that all the time as it happens.
Yeah, I bet.
Ukraine and Russia, that's it. Let them get on with it. It's about time we started acting like an island. Let them get on with it. We've paid them enough money. Not interested now.
It's on our soil.
What do you mean? Explain.
It's on European soil.
Well, that's what the UN's for, isn't it?
Potentially, but of course the UN is made up of a collective of countries.
Yeah, well,
Trump is backing this. Does that in any way change our view? Because I get exactly what you're saying, Rob, and I don't wholly I'd love to be able to say that's how we could do business. But when you've got the US saying, look, Trump said it ages ago, didn't he? In fact, when I think Starmer went to the White House, or when Trump came here, whichever one it was, they talked about the fact that, it's not for America to put boots on the ground as a kind of security. It's for Europe to put boots on the ground for security. It's on our turf, as it were, if you look at it from a continental perspective.
Yeah, but Starmer's strutting about like Winston Churchill, like a statesman. Don't you realise don't he realise that if he gets us back through the back door in the EU, he won't be the spokesman anymore. He won't be, you know, it's because of Brexit that he's being able to strut.
Yeah, that's possibly true, although Macron's doing quite a lot of strutting as well. But he's in desperate measures, isn't he? So that's a whole different domestic jip for him.
Well, I think it's all strutting about. Wait till the body bags start coming back into the country. See how he, you know, coach then.
Well,
No,
that's always the potential, isn't it, of any... I mean, but do we or America or anyone, do we just let Russia get on with it?
Because, well, look, any peace agreement they're going to break. They've got a history of it. It's the same as go over the other side of the world, the same as Palestine and Israel.
Yep.
You'll never, ever, ever stop that. Not in our lifetime, I'll tell you that now.
Okay.
You know?
No, I hear you, and you're not alone in that view, that we should have nothing to do with this at all. But I guess the overarching argument, Robert, is that, well, someone's got to have something to do with it. Otherwise, you've just got Russia tearing the place up. Listen, I've got to move, Robert. Great call. Thank you. 0344 499 1000. On drink driving, Neil in Oldham says the issue with drink driving limits is that if you are slightly under, you go scot-free. But if you're slightly over, you're treated like you've had 10 pints. The amount of alcohol in your blood at this low level does not correlate with your mental impairment or coordination. It has been proven that half a pint of beer improves reaction times. Is that true? I do hear people say, you know, oh, mate, I drink much better when I've had a drink. I don't know about that. But anyway, that is what Neil is saying. I'm not advocating drink driving, he says, but lowering the limit will only cause more people to be caught and treated like criminals, or will force more people to stop drinking at all if they need to drive even the next day. Yeah, I hear that too. It might criminalise people who are not drunkards in any shape or form. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. Drop us a voice note there as well. World security, Russia, Ukraine, boots on the ground from GB and France. Thoughts on all of that. Lines are open. This is Talk.
You get up in the morning, you put your big boy trousers on and you go out in the world, and there is risk involved in that. Do you think Britain was built on zero risk? Oh, let's not go to the other side of the world in a ship, we might all drown. There can't be no risk in life. Where is the point where you're going to stop us? Where is the point where it's going to stop? I'll tell you where the point is where it's going to stop. They're going to drinking alcohol is just going to become illegal. That's effectively what they're doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is talk. So that's 2 tankers that the United States have intercepted, one in the Atlantic, but in European waters. Apparently there was a British RAF detail, I think it's the right phrase, was involved in that. And then one of the Caribbean as well. I mean, this looks like the shape of things to come. They are not messing around. America are not messing around. This is essentially a T-shirt that says, "We are the global power." It's a firework up the left-wing trouser leg of the Chinese, if nothing else. And obviously the Russians as well. Small fry compared to the Chinese, I suppose. Before we go back to the calls, don't go away, Ian in London. Voice of Doom, day 8. We've been trying to find the answer to this for 8 days now. Can it go today? This is the mystery voice, but it's political. You've got to identify who you think this is.
Going to be community relations.
Any idea? Oh, it's no, don't call. It's message 87222. 87222 if you know who this is.
Going to be community relations.
And we only give you the right answer if we get a right answer. If you find out, we can find out after the news if somebody comes through with a correct identification of who owns this voice.
Going to be community relations.
87222. Do you own a voice? I suppose you do, really, don't you? Do you mind? That's my voice. I own it. Ian, down in London, on drink driving. Ian, what have you got for us?
You say drink driving. You got it correct about 10 minutes or 20 minutes ago when you said the newsroom is so full of different things. It's horrific.
Yeah.
It is absolutely horrific.
You mean in terms of the world we're currently living in?
Oh, I'll tell you something. I'm now 68, nearly, right? And I'm glad I'm not 28 or even 18 because I think they're just... I feel sorry for them. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I kind of share that because you think, you know, does this... And it also, without being... I wasn't trying to be twee or smart earlier when I made the point that, you know, this is essentially about a group of mostly blokes who could sit around a table and go, let's not do this.
Yeah, but it's like with, let's say, the drink driving. Drink driving is abhorrent. I don't drink at all. I never have done because I've got a very... when I get into something that I enjoy, I'd go berserk for it. So if I drank, I'd be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I don't go near the stuff. But when you go out on the road and you go around the North Circular, every single night you will find lunatics weaving in and out of the traffic.
Yep.
And they're not drunk because, according to where their sect or religion where they come from, they're not supposed to drink. Right? So I'm going to say it that way, being politically correct. Right? So it's unfortunate if somebody has had a drink and they have an accident because their reaction is not as good because they're trying to stay away from these ones that are weaving in and out.
So dangerous driving is, you know, is rife among us, of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to get it sort of stopped, all right, and you want more police on the roads, traffic police, stop the marches. Because where does the money go to? It goes to sort of like police the marches.
Yeah.
So there isn't the police for the traffic police. So it just carries on and on and on. And putting it on a slightly different vein, it's like, as you say, like all of a sudden Britain and France are saying, oh, we'll go and put troops into Ukraine. But they've never ever come in to say, well, we'll sort of border with Gaza to sort of stop like the Hamas going into Israel. They never sort of care because it's not to their interest.
Well, there is. I suppose it would be argued that the Israeli military is more than capable of policing that element, and they have massive support from America, of course.
Yeah, but I'm not saying they can't do it. They can very well, right? Well, apart from unfortunately one incident, but that is sort of like, it's very funny how it all goes around. And again with this oil tanker, yes, or tankers as it is now, right? I'm glad I said that right. Right, but it's this whole thing. Yes, Trump is rattling his saber, not only to Russia but to China, because he knows that China's got its big eyes on Taiwan. Right, so he thinks, well, if they're going to sort of go into Taiwan, which maybe they're going to do, I'll get Greenland, I'll get Venezuela, I'll increase my board. And have you ever played Risk? Yes,
years ago.
Years ago. Greenland was always part of North America.
Well, it is part of North America as a continent.
Yes, And that's why, you know, he sort of says, all right, I'm going to have it to my sort of thing. And even during the Second World War, there were lots of flights that went through there. Right? But it is. The world has gone crazy. And I just see it every day. You know, you thought a couple of years ago COVID was the worst thing. But now it's just carrying on and on and on.
Yeah. And at the moment, as we sit here on January the 7th, 2026... there is literally no sign of any of this getting better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Listen, Ian, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. This was never meant to be where we would end up at this point in the 21st century. You know, supposedly, we had the First World War, we'd had the Second World War, and there'd been, you know, obviously tentacles of war in different parts of the world across many continents. Usually isolated, sometimes domestically, etc. You think about Northern Ireland, IRA, that kind of stuff over here. You think about the many wars in Africa. If you go over to different parts of Asia, into Pakistan, I mean, there's lots of domestic. In terms of a sort of a tangible global sense that we're in a precarious place. Because whenever things have gone wrong before, we've sort of run with the mantra that, you know, well, it's, you know, the wider world is still in good shape. That's kind of how it's always been. Yep, there's some terrible things going on in Sri Lanka. There's something awful going on in Taiwan. But generally speaking, the rest of the world, the big players, everything's cool. Everything's fine. And that sense of security and safety that comes with that. I suppose, you know, in many ways, that's kind of gone a bit, hasn't it? That's the bit that's sort of disappeared. Because now it looks like it looks objectively to be quite a precarious existence we've got right now. But it does, and maybe I'm just being optimistic here, it does sort of throw out the question of, you know, is it for the common good? Do we end up with, OK, the Greenland thing's a bit weird, bit unconventional, Venezuela, little strange, we're going to run the place. However, ultimately, this thing ends well. If you think of perhaps a more poignant example would be Gaza, because Trump had previously talked about America, you know, reconstructing the place. Now, you can't change an ideology. You can't bomb your way out of an ideology. You can kill as many leaders as you like. You can curtail, you can harass and tamper with, but you don't get rid of an ideology. So what's in someone's mad brain? But yeah, that part of the world would look great if you could go to Gaza and it became, you know, sort of Ibiza of the Middle East, or you know, some other place that is rather delightful to go to. But there's always going to be oddballs among us. We know that much. We're in a strange place. But I am asking the favour, maybe too soon. Asking the question, maybe too soon. Will the world be a safer place in a year's time? From where we are now, if you look at everything that's going on, in 1 year from now, will this country and the wider world be safer than it is today? Or are we heading in a grim direction? Lines are open. Here's the voice of doom.
Going to be community relations.
87222, if you think you know who that is.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Welcome back. It is the Afternoon Empire. It is the home of common sense. So much to get through at this end. We are, of course, discussing drink driving. The government is talking about limiting the drink drive limit. This is for England and Wales to put it in line with that of Scotland and other European countries, although apparently data from Scotland is not very consistent in terms of how successful that has been. They will also introduce tougher penalties and new measures to curb drink driving and drug driving as well. I think the latter is fast becoming, certainly in some areas, a bigger problem. The idea is to reduce road deaths, of course, but, you know, can governments ever fully legislate for accidents, oddballs, nut jobs and criminals? I don't think they can, but governments sort of think they can. Details on that. Also, Labour plans a Brexit bill to align the UK with future EU rules and phase out the fuel duty cut, sparking criticism over sovereignty and cost of living impacts. I mean, it is rather interesting. There's nothing wrong with a closer relationship with the EU. You want to have a good relationship with any trading bloc, whether it's on our own doorstep or across the other side of the world. What you don't really want to do is start changing laws to make that happen. Are you smelling a rat? A big, dirty rat? And a Turkish man has been jailed for 11 years for supplying thousands of small boats and engines to Channel people smuggling gangs, with investigators saying his equipment was used in a large share of crossings, including fatal journeys as well. We'll have more on that story. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. This from James on drink driving. James says, I heard years ago that drunk pedestrians are also included in all drink-related vehicle deaths and accidents. Maybe someone can confirm if this is still the case, as it will skew the data over the limit drivers in drink-related vehicle deaths and accidents. That's a really good point. I would imagine that it's quite possible they are included. I mean, it is of note, of course, that, you know, if somebody is absolutely K-eyed and they walk out in the middle of a flipping carriageway, yeah, that is certainly worth noting down as drink-related, but it's not drink-driving-related, strictly. Back to the issue of security. Paul in Manchester says the United States are trying to board the oil tanker destined for Russia. Is this the beginning of a war? As far as Greenland, it would be NATO allies against UN troops. No British boots on the ground in Ukraine, says Paul. Lots of comment coming through on that. And something else that always generates lots of comment is this. Labour planning new Brexit legislation to restore dynamic alignment. Did that phrase, dynamic alignment? If you put that in your dissertation at university, you'd be called out for it. They go, could you elaborate, please, on dynamic alignment, what it actually means? And then you sit down on an old stool with a study lamp, looking at the words, dynamic alignment, what does it mean? And you conclude after about 5 days, it means absolutely nothing. Means nothing. Dynamic alignment rules just means we're going to take their rules, basically, allowing future Brussels regulations to apply automatically to the UK. That's what dynamic alignment means, of course, including food standards and carbon trading. A move ministers say will boost growth, but critics call a surrender of sovereignty, as the party also sets out plans to phase out the fuel duty cut, drawing opposition from Conservatives and the Reform Party. Let's speak to Andrew Montford, Director of Net Zero Watch. Andrew, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I do love the dictionary of politico-speak. Dynamic alignment, what a load of old tosh.
Absolute nonsense, isn't it? It's just politics by word salad.
It really is. You know, it sounds like, oh, they've worked hard for something and we've suddenly produced some dynamic alignment. You throw in the word dynamic and there is sort of a superlative nature to that, and you sort of sense, wow, something really good's going to happen here. But looking at this crock of announcements, I can't see any good.
No, I don't think it will do us any good at all. I think we've spent a long time trying to get out of the EU and make our own rules. Why we would want to align ourselves either dynamically or otherwise to the EU when the EU seems hell bent on economic suicide is beyond my understanding, really. In terms of my area of expertise, the energy system, this will tend to increase our costs. The EU carbon costs are higher than the costs that we've had here. So aligning ourselves to those is not going to help at all. We can only hope and pray that we don't get locked in. I mean, one assumes that come 2029 we will be able to reverse this and get back on aligning ourselves. Well, let's even dynamically align ourselves to the parts of the world that are growing quickly, and stop hobbling ourselves with these crazy carbon costs that are just closing down our industry left, right, and centre, and causing the economy probably to go into meltdown eventually.
Yeah, and of course the EU have a very harmonised and, as far as they're concerned, a very agreeable, unified approach. I mean, there are, of course, opposition parties that disagree, but broadly speaking, they're really singing from this net zero hymn sheet, right?
That's right. They, like us, have had almost uniformity for decades on net zero. There is a hope, I think, that the tide is turning in Europe as well. There are lots of climate skeptic parties coming to the fore across the continent. And so you might hope that by 2029, well, I hope that things are so bad that we start to get a new consensus that net zero renewables have been catastrophic mistakes, a disaster for European civilization, and that we have to reverse pretty pronto. That I think is probably a likely scenario.
Yes.
You can see the state of Germany's economy is awful now. They're probably even worse than us, and they are losing manufacturing, the core of their economy, really quite quickly. We at least have, we've already lost ours. We have financial services keeping the economy afloat. But yeah, you can hope that quite a lot of Europe is going to change course.
I would have thought so. What is carbon trading? What is that really? Is that the offsetting of carbon?
Yeah, that's right. You get permission to produce some carbon, and that gets paid, and you can buy and sell permits. So the idea is that the permission to release carbon into the atmosphere ends up with the person who needs it most. Right. But in reality, the result is that we just end up with uncompetitive manufacturing industries, and we export all our jobs to China, and that is not a good result.
I mean, that's the wider picture here, isn't it? That's the picture that Donald Trump has brilliantly identified. Whether you like him or not, he's certainly right onto that one. But the Chinese component to all of this is curious, because every windmill, every solar panel, and God knows what else in between seems to come out of China, not out of a manufacturing engineering base in Bromley.
No, there is very little green electricity generation equipment produced here. I think we have one factory on the Isle of Wight that makes the sails for wind turbines, and that's about it. The turbines themselves are made in Germany and America, or in Scandinavia. The towers are made in the Middle East or other places like that. And solar is all from China. So there has been there's been very little, very few silver linings to the cloud of deindustrialization. We haven't got jobs. We've just exported jobs, and we've knackered our economy in the process.
Yeah, and that is the phrase we will leave it with: knackered our economy. Love it, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. As ever, Andrew Montford is the director of Net Zero Watch, and it's quite evangelical stuff over there in the EU as well. I mean, you think Ed Miliband is on a crusade, because boy, he is on a crusade, and he sings really from that same kind of EU-based hymn sheet. That's what gets him out of bed in the morning. Back to world security. Jim says, Afternoon, Ian. It's Jim in the Netherlands here. Referring to President Trump's announcement about Greenland, which is perhaps just as a veiled threat, I would like to point out that a similar event did actually take place under the administration of President McKinley in 1898, when America annexed Hawaii. When questioned about this action, he replied that if we hadn't acted, then Japan would have. The reason was, amongst many trade considerations, America saw it as important to move first in the Pacific for defensive reasons, which proved real with the attack on Pearl Harbor many years later. One could perhaps draw similar conclusions about the present global situation. Finally, I'd like to point out that President Trump is a great admirer of President McKinley. So that could explain a lot. Jim, that's a great... I didn't know any of that. When you start looking into these stories, because who knew that Greenland was going to become... I mean, it was already there a bit in the background, but so prominent, and Venezuela. You start going down rabbit holes, and you start, and certainly doing this job, you have no choice. You start to look up, you know, different little facts and figures about Venezuela that you didn't know before, what it used to produce, what it used to look like, you know, what country it was in the 50s compared to the country it is today, etc. And that's what throws up things like this. I didn't know that McKinley and Hawaii came around because of McKinley in 1898. Great message. Jim, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go to Mark in Dundee. How you doing, Mark?
Not too bad, how are you?
Yeah, very good, sir. What have you got for us?
This regarding sending troops to Ukraine. Now, when the war first started, Ukrainians left for all of Europe. So why don't the European countries say to them now, look, if we come to some agreement, we will basically give you some kind of training and send you back. Because then they're not fleeing a war-torn country then.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones that fled could actually go back and help rather than sending British, French, Italian troops.
Got it. What do you think the likelihood of that is?
Well, I doubt very much if it happens, but I think it's something that should be looked into rather than sending British troops over there.
I mean, some would say, look, British troops are actually the perfect people to go there because it's European, not EU, European, and that's part of our continent, and they're pretty skilled. You know, arguably some of the best on the planet, even if there's fewer of them.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and you can maybe have a few advisors, but rather than the amount of bodies that would go over, you've got people from that country who can possibly now go back because they've meant to come to some agreement.
Yep.
So they could then look after their own, if you understand what I mean.
No, I understand totally what you mean. Do you, on the wider question that we're discussing here as well, Mark, about sort of global security and safety, I mean, we've never really been in this place, have we, where it's quite so fragmented and possibly even disturbing?
Yeah, I understand that. Now, what gets me is, because you were talking about Greenland as well, Mr. Stammer complaining about this, that and the next thing. Yeah, he gave the Chagos Islands.
Say again, he gave the what?
Was it the Chagos Islands he gave over?
Yes, the Chagos, yeah.
Yeah, so he was quite happy to hand them and get rid of them, which is a strategic point. But then when it comes to Greenland, he wants to stick his nose into what someone else is doing.
Yeah.
I understand it's Europe, this, that, and the next thing, yeah. But on one hand, he's quite happy to risk our security with the Chagos Islands.
Yep.
But then risk our security saying, well, I'm not happy about Greenland.
Yeah.
On two different scales.
I mean, some people might refute the equivalence there, but I totally take your point. But then we're looking for consistency in Keir Starmer, Mark, and I think that's a fool's errand, isn't it?
Totally 100%.
Great call, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Mark in Dundee. This one from Debbie, who says they want to be worried about all the drivers without a licence. I was in Broad Street, that's in Birmingham, by the way, over Christmas, and the amount of motorcycle delivery and drivers, non-British drivers, who were going the wrong way up one-way streets was very... The drink driving will affect the people who have had a drink and the drive the next day. I think there's probably two messages there in one almost. You will be okay now, but not in the future. It's a good point about non-licensed and non-insured people. There is a huge issue around that. I mean, lots of younger people are just going, look, I'm not going to... In fact, not even younger people. I'm not even going to insure the car. You get the insurance come through and you think, really? Well, it's ridiculous. It's thousands. I'd rather take the risk of not having a prang, not getting done for speeding and driving without insurance and then take the points and whatever fine. That will be cheaper than paying the insurance. There is that mindset out there at the moment, although ANPR cameras, of course, are all over the place, so that makes it a little tricky. 0344 499 1000. The breaking news as well this afternoon is that the United States has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker. It was originally seen with a Russian flag, but it was actually Venezuelan. This was in Icelandic waters, European waters, if you want to look at it that way. It was a 2-week pursuit, apparently. This wasn't like something that just happened all of a sudden. Oh, look, there it is, and we'll go out and get it. The US European Command said that the sanctioned vessel had defied a US naval blockade of Venezuela. The British RAF aircraft were involved, and UK air bases were used as launch pads for the US military aircraft, according to reports. The ship was south of Iceland, suddenly changed direction on Wednesday after it was heading towards Britain, according to ship tracking data. Russia then sent a submarine to escort the tanker, which changed its registration from Guyana to Russia in late December and altered its name from Bella 1 to the Marinera. The operation to capture the ship was carried out by US Coast Guard military, according to official sources. And then we heard just after that there was another tanker that was caught in the Caribbean. So it's all systems go on the high seas, it seems. Responses to that and any breaking news, of course, as we get it. 0344 499 1000. And the Voice of Doom. Have we finally, after 8 days, got a winner on the Voice of Doom? Remember, this is the voice you were charged with identifying.
Going to be community relations.
Who is that? These are some of the guesses that we had. Could it be Yvette Cooper? It is not. Joe Swinson? Interesting guess. No. Carla Denyer? No. Luciana Berger? No. Amber Rudd? No. We haven't got a right answer. It rolls over to tomorrow for day 9. Stand by for that. There's no big prize, by the way. It's just a little thing we throw in at 10 to 3 every afternoon. It's back at the same time. And maybe, eventually, I did give you a tiny clue there, by the way. Tiny, tiny clue. 0344 499 1000. Back with your calls coming next on Talk.
brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The other point from Debbie that I didn't read out was this. In many pubs near me, the soft drinks cost more than alcoholic drinks. Yeah, that's another scam, isn't it? Like, if you ask for a Coca-Cola, and they often put, I don't want a Coca-Cola in a pint glass, but it's almost up there with a pint. Wow. I'm confused how the taxes are so expensive when, according to the government, it's really cheap to charge these electric cars that taxis usually are. But yeah, it depends. You know, there's taxes and there's taxes. There's, you know, the proper royal fleet of London taxis, the greatest taxi fleet on the planet, known as black cabs. Still pound for pound, the best value in every single respect. Clean, safe, straight to the point. You know where you go. You won't beat that anywhere. I know there is the whole kind of Uber thing, and now there's a few others on the block as well, has kind of taken over the minds of many people. But, you know, I was in a cab. It wasn't an Uber. It was something the company supplied. I don't think it was. It was when I was coming back from doing a Christmas shift on Friday, after New Year, and you know, I'm in this cab with this guy, and you could just tell the way he was. This was not a professional driver. This was not a driver. This is like me being plonked in the middle of Red Square and being asked to take somebody to St. Petersburg or something, or whatever it's called now. It's not really going to, you know. You could get there with a sat-nav but the confidence of your driving and your ability to kind of navigate and you don't get the sense you're with someone who knows the place. However, if you are, a humble cabbie in a borough around the UK, you probably do know your neck of the woods, and you probably are a good driver. And I know that it's not easy to make a living in that profession as well. You know, things ain't what they used to be, as we seem to say in all areas of life now. Let's take a call. This is Richard down in London. Richard, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, and good to talk to you as ever. Happy New Year. This talk again of war. I mean, there's two things. If there was what we would call a total war, where the actual population of the country had to fight, I think an awful lot of people just wouldn't want to fight. Certainly not for something like Ukraine, because the view I'd take, and I've said to you several times, I want to get my country back. Yeah. Once I've got my country back, then I might be willing to open the discussion. But as it currently stands, there's
something higher up the agenda first.
Well, because as David Starkey said earlier, I mean, last year Starkey said we're the only country to have changed our demographics dramatically in a short space of time without there being a war or an invasion. Yeah. So in a way, when you think about that, what he's really saying there is normally when a country changes as dramatically as ours has done, it's because, you know, like the Romans have come in and, you know, obviously the population has changed. Yeah. So there's a sense in which Britain is, if you like, no longer really Britain anymore. And I think, to me, we have to resolve that, if indeed we can. But I think the other point here, certainly over the last week or so, it's become clear that we have a president who, I mean, I'm choosing my words carefully, but he's not in that much better state than Joe Biden. Yeah. And yet he's suddenly woken up and he wants to go to war with everybody. And I'm kind of thinking, well, I don't want a daddy. You know, I don't think the world needs a daddy. It was almost the world was a safer place almost. And it sounds crazy, but you'll remember, like I do, in the 70s, America wouldn't do anything because they think, well, we mustn't upset the Russians, and the Russians would do the same thing. They'd be just as scared of upsetting the Americans. And now it seems, obviously, with the decline of Russia, and it's also very clear, I think it's now very clear that Trump thinks he's got... people think that Putin's got Trump in his pocket. It's more the other way around. Trump is giving Putin things because Trump's actually worried about China. It's in a way we can sort of see that. But the other point I'll make about world security is this. If America are going to kind of pull the rug and say, well, we're not necessarily going to support you in NATO anymore, and that's an 8-decade commitment that they're basically going back on. And I think we should suggest, well, that's okay, that's entirely up to you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't mind, there's another 8-decade commitment that we'd like to go back on, which is that 8 decades ago we said to Germany, well, you can't have nuclear weapons because you've been bad in the Second World War. Well, Ian, we have very little choice because it seems as though Europe hasn't got much protection anymore. Obviously, the French have got an independent nuclear force, and we have, but there's some doubts about our force, isn't there? Let's be honest. I think they've been testing tridents and things haven't been going too well. So if Europe, and by the way, I'm not a supporter of NATO or the European Union. I think the future of Europe is that Europeans have got to decide whether they want to be replaced, because they are being replaced at the moment. And to me, that's far more important than going to war with anybody. But if Europe really if America's going to pull the rug, then I think we've got every right to say, well, look, okay, we'll let Germany have a nuclear weapon so that we can defend Europe much better, and we won't need you, America. You know what I mean? Because currently, for 2 weeks, I'm hearing people really twiddling thumbs and saying, oh, what's going to happen next? What are the Americans going to do? Well, if we do this, if we say to Germany, look, go ahead and develop your own nuclear weapons. And by the way, Ian, a country like Poland is very much in the firing line. They should be free to buy a nuclear weapon from the French. So in a way, we're saying to the Americans, well, okay, you're not going to defend Europe anymore, and you think we're so weak. Well, we're doing something about it. We're going to be a lot stronger. And then, Ian, the final point is this. Let's wait for the Americans to say, oh, hold on, you can't do that because there's a nuclear non-proliferation pact. Well, if they want to change the rules of the game, then there's nothing nuclear. You know what I mean? Do you see where I'm going with it?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think then, in a year, just a final point, Richard, in a year's time, will this world be safer?
No, because I think I have to say, Ian, I think the world will be a safer place. I hope Trump loses the midterm elections badly, and I say that as somebody I can't stand the Democrat Party. I think they're as bad as the Labour Party, but I think he's out of control, and I think there's a concern. I think one of Jeremy Kyle's guests said something quite unusual. He said Trump, the game Trump is playing is he wants to find out whether the American army will do exactly what he says they will. See what I mean? And that is my concern. I'm concerned about that as well. I want the American people to say to Trump, look, you're just going too far, mate. You're simply going too far.
Yeah, and I think there's certainly, as you will be aware, Richard, when you look at what happened in Venezuela, we spoke to a former senior army military man in the States who would ordinarily have been quite Republican, was not supporting Trump on Venezuela, was not supporting Trump on Greenland. You look at Marjorie, as about as right-wing as it gets, not supporting Trump on this. There are many of those voices. What will happen when the American people get to decide in the midterms? Richard, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Kelvin in Macclesfield says, putting boots on the ground, putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. Who will be wearing the boots? Nobody here in this country in their right mind would fight for this country or this lying slug in power. But I would recommend starting with signing up migrants. They could go first since they get put first for everything else. Then watch them leave. Those dinghies will go like speedboats back to France. Yes, maybe. Although, we have an army, right? And there's an army there that, they get instructions. It's interesting what Richard was just saying about, will the American army do what their president wants? Will the British army do what their prime minister wants? Boots on the ground, Ukraine, after a peace process. I wouldn't feel very safe. guarding the fence over there at one of those ports in Ukraine. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. More comment coming in from you. Paul in Manchester says the United States are trying to board the oil tanker destined for Russia. Is this the beginning of a war? As far as Greenland, would it be NATO allies against UN troops? No British boots on the ground. I do this once a day, don't I? I think I might have read that a little while ago. Haven't read this one, though. Steve says, I cannot understand how lowering the drink drive limit will save lives. If the amount of road deaths caused by drink driving is a certain number, then 100% of those were caused by drivers over the current limit. Every other case has had to have been under the current limit, so we're not caused by drunk drivers, surely. All this move does is further cripple pubs and bring more money into the government coffers via more fines. Just to bolt on to the news we've been reporting about the United States and tankers, we're now hearing British Armed Forces provided support to the US operation to seize the Marinera tanker, including RAF surveillance and RAF Tide Force support ship. I think I should say RAF, not RFA. Tide ship support, the Ministry of Defence have said. So that's as much as we know so far. This seems to be an effort that had multiple agencies and parties connected to it. Let's move to this story then. The Turkish man who's been jailed for 11 years for supplying thousands of small boats and engines to channel people smuggling gangs, with investigators saying that his equipment was used in a large share of crossings, including some of those crossings which resulted in fatalities. Turkish national Adem Savas has been jailed for 11 years in Belgium, fined €400,000 for supplying boats and engines to smugglers. Let's speak with Kevin Foster, former immigration minister. Kevin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, this is obviously a result, but of course there are many more of these characters out there, as we now know. But it's quite rare, isn't it, to hear of a case such as this? So, did the various intelligence services get lucky, or was there some other story behind this?
Well, I think the intelligence services, and probably led by the National Crime Agency in terms of UK work on this have had a success and have had a result from working with their counterparts across Europe. You know, it's not unwelcome to see someone being prosecuted to this level, receiving a significant sentence, and also, of course, a deterrent effect to those who, I think in this case, the guy was trying to make out he was running a legitimate maritime business when it was very obvious what his products were being used for, and he was well aware of it. So it's a success. Will cases like this on its own stop boats in the Channel? No, it won't. And unless you remove the business model that is fundamentally driving this trade, then there will be other people that will step into his place. But, you know, it's a welcome success, and, you know, we shouldn't be, churlish in not congratulating the police and the intelligence services who worked on this.
Indeed. I mean, it appears that this fella was supplying, thousands of journeys to take place. Did this over about a 5-year period, charging £4,000 per package. And when you see those numbers, Kevin, you realise, not that we didn't already know this, but it does put into context just how big this industry and how criminal and organised this industry is.
Yeah, these aren't just like, a few friends clubbing together to buy a boat. We're talking organised criminal gangs and activity. Many of whom will also have interests in things like firearms, drugs and other areas. These are really quite dangerous criminals. And we can see that actually via the lawlessness and the impact of crime in the northwest of France, around the Pas de Calais. We've seen talk of attacks, stabbings, shootings, all connected around this flow of people, which then brings with it a very significant flow of money, even seeing gangs fighting over a boat. So, for example, one gang has got its paying customers there, and another group shows up to try and seize the boat and go without paying. So it is a big money operation. It's absolutely right that we're going after these people. But this is where we have to come back to, just saying smash the gangs. Well, that was a slogan, not a full strategy. This isn't the solution in itself. This is part of a strategy, for an overall result. But we can't just see prosecuting gang members as the only thing we need to do to stop what's happening in the Channel.
Indeed. Another story worth getting your thoughts on this, Kevin, connected to immigration. A restaurant has closed in this country. This is after more than 20 years, blaming disruption and damage linked to an asylum hotel next door. The police and the Home Office dispute claims and pledge to end the use of hotels for migrants, of course. But it does, I suppose, I don't know whether this comes under the bracket of social cohesion, which is, I've always thought was a huge factor when considering immigration into any country. It seems to almost make the any other business part of the story, but I think it should be right at the top. But nonetheless, the restaurant is saying, actually, we had so much disruption from the hotel next door, which housed about 100 illegal immigrants, that we were forced to close. This is a grim example, an unintended and perhaps another example of the damage that unfettered immigration can cause to a country.
Well, it's a sign of the impact that having to find contingency accommodation arrangements to deal with the numbers arriving has in a local community. It's clearly not going to be attractive for any of us, me or you, Ian, thinking, where should we go for a night out? I know, let's go to the restaurant next to the hotel where there's all those demonstrators outside. By the way, both for and against migration, I think I understand in this instance. This isn't to point at one side of the argument. It's clearly going to have an impact if you're sat there trying to run a business that's meant to be providing leisure, hospitality, and a nice evening out. So it is starting to see this. It's a reminder of why we do need to deal with this. As you say, this is pushing at social fabric, because a lot of this it's also the unfairness. This isn't actually just people who perhaps lived there all their lives and families were here in the UK for many years. Actually, many more recent migrant communities actually quite resent the fact that people are buying their way around border control, are just arriving in flagrant disregard of the rules, when they and their family, particularly perhaps some of those in the Windrush generation, they complied with the rules. They came here perfectly lawfully. They've worked all their lives. They've paid taxes. They don't like being. Many of them actually quite resent the way other people just view this country as a country they can try and break into, and then try and basically, live off the state via putting in claims and then trying to pursue benefits afterwards. So, this is an example of why, if we're going to deal with many of the issues around immigration, and actually, if the government wants to look at, its polling, why is it so low? Well, it's because many voters actually desperately want to see an answer to this issue. And until the government actually manages to implement one, rather than get a new slogan, their poll ratings are going to continue to decline.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Listen, Kevin, thank you. Always great to speak. Kevin Foster is a former immigration minister. This restaurant in Southampton, I mean, it's just another example. This doesn't take a brain box to work out that if you open up an area, whether it's a hotel or an army camp, homes of multiple occupancy, and you stuff it full of 23-year-old men. I mean, you could argue whether they're white, black, brown, indigenous, from another country, legal or illegal. Just think about it this way. For those who are a little sensitive to these stories and can't really stomach reality, any area that would just suddenly invite 100, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 people into your postcode and expect there to be no problems with that. This is our government. We're currently discussing here today about security issues around the world, where we are with what's going on with Trump and China and Russia and Ukraine, boots on the ground from the Brits and the French, what is going to happen to Greenland. I mean, the miserable list goes on. It's all pretty fragmented out there. It's not the safest this planet has ever been. That's how it feels right now. And yet over here, despite all of that, we still find time to open up the old borders and keep things going tickety-boo. And we're stuck. Oh, the 600 men, we don't know who they are. Not meant to be here, by the way. Just how do they get here? On a plane? No, just rowed over on a boat, on a big old rubber boat. And that's kind of where we're at. Let's get a call from Grace in Ealing on the disturbances on planet Earth. Grace, what are you making of this? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and Happy New Year.
And you too.
Yeah, well, it's hard to completely make heads or tails of all of the complicated things going on, but I think something that kind of sticks in my mind regarding Trump is that America has obviously had this idea of dominating the world to some extent. I was thinking yesterday it was a bit strange how Stephen Miller was saying that Denmark has got no right to Greenland, and I kind of thought, well, your ancestors went and moved over and took over America, and you've got the right to be in America. But yeah, one of the first founders of what is now the United States made this speech about a shining city on a hill, and Reagan cited this line, and I've heard it be quoted by various American podcasters I listen to. Reagan said again, we should be a shining city on a hill, which is actually taking a Bible verse slightly out of context, because Jesus was talking about sharing the good news that he offers eternal life, not just about doing something that's political or social in any way. But at least maybe America had the idea that it was going to be a positive force in the world, theoretically. Yeah. In reality, obviously, it's done some things that have led to some very detrimental outcomes. Sure. And I think that as much as we hate Trump, we probably don't... Well, sorry, I say we. People on my side of the political spectrum get annoyed with Trump. We don't actually talk enough about how corporations have been nicking other places' resources without us giving much pushback. So it's other organisations, corporations from America and from our part of the world who have been taking minerals, and we don't argue enough about that as much as we get angry now that Trump is trying to nick Greenland's minerals. But the fact that he has essentially kind of shifted America away from the idea of trying to be a positive force in the world to just himself, I think, being driven by ego and selfishness, I'm afraid, is really frustrating to see. I get that, Maduro was evil. I get all of that. I get that there's a need to have strength against Russia and China. But it seems to me, given that, Greenland doesn't need to be in America's possession for security purposes, given that you don't need to necessarily take, you might only need to take Maduro out, but he seems that he mostly went into Venezuela to get oil, given that he released the leader of Honduras, who had been trafficking drugs. It just seems his motivations are ultimately about selfishness and his ego, and not about trying to make the world a better place.
Is that you're projecting your bias onto Donald Trump's motivation?
Well, it's impossible to say to what extent one projects one's own bias. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said, "Oh, you're just saying this because you don't like Trump." And I'm thinking, well, how do you know that you're not saying that I'm saying this because you have presumptions about me. I followed Trump for a while online when he first came on the political scene, because I thought I'm going to try really hard not to be biased. I get that some of the media are going to be biased about him. I want to see his own words. So I followed his own words on social media for a while. And it's really plain. He is driven by his own ego and selfishness, and so much of what he says himself makes it very clear that it's all about him and achieving for himself and showing off and boasting. And it's so contrary to what I think, we should aim towards humility and selflessness and caring about others. So I'm trying to look at it in a balanced way, and I'm not just listening to one mainstream media outlet. I'm listening to what he himself is saying, and it does seem that he's primarily about getting things.
What he doesn't. I mean, you wouldn't have to be an investigative journalist or detective to work out the ego bit, because he doesn't hide it, of course. He will say in a speech, I've done things that no one else has ever done. It's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful. The beautiful way I've been able to do this. No other president, no other president. He talks in those kind of terms. It's sort of part of his shtick, isn't it? So even, notwithstanding the fact that he's an egomaniac, because he's a world leader, they all are, of course, even those that do a great job of trying to hide it. Could you not be both? Could you not be an egomaniac and a very effective leader?
I don't think you can necessarily be a very effective leader long term if you're unwilling to listen to the advice of sensible and informed people. I mean, I remember seeing him a few years ago talking to people amidst some wildfires that were going on in California, and he said, it'll cool down, trust me. Just like, never mind all the politicians in the local area who've been dealing with this problem for ages, never mind experts in fires and scientists, just, it'll cool down, trust me. So it's just like deciding what he thinks ought to happen. And I remember hearing about how he grew up with a kind of fake, phony pastor called Norman Vincent Peale, who taught the power of positive thinking and this idea that you can just bring about what you want just by thinking or saying it. And that's just complete nonsense. And also, I will always have a kind of bias, if you want to call it that, against serious egotism, because as a Christian, I feel that it's really important that we have humility, that we recognise, including me myself, I need to recognise my own flaws and sins. And so seeing someone like Trump be so brazen in his boasting,
no, I get it,
doesn't sit well with me.
I reckon he'd speak well of you, though, Grace. That's all I could say. As a good Christian leader, we'll say. Grace in Ealing, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. You're listening to Talk. It's 10 to 4.
brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
You get up in the morning, you put your big boy trousers on and you go out in the world, and there is risk involved in that. Do you think Britain was built on zero risk? Oh, let's not go to the other side of the world in a ship, we might all drown. There can't be no risk in life. Where is the point where you're going to stop us? Where is the point where it's going to stop? I'll tell you where the point is where it's going to stop. They're going to drink.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
On that issue of drink driving, this comes from Mechelen, I think it is. It says drink driving in the Netherlands and Belgium. One person is Bob. That is the person who drives his friends by not drinking. Often pubs will give him free alcoholic drinks. It works well. Is that the kind of sort of code name, or the who's Bob tonight? They have talked about that as well in this potential, could you do something like that? I don't know how that would work out, but I certainly take the point. Let's speak to Kenny down in London, who knows all about drink driving. Kenny, what's happened to you? Good afternoon.
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
Well, I've had 5 drink drivings over the years, not for a while now, though, but I heard you saying about a chap who got done when he went and picked his car up in the morning.
Yeah.
And, well, I was in the pub one day, never had a drink, and I was done a drive-wise thing, which takes a bit of time off your sentence, And I got in the van, I was pulled over by the police, and they stopped me and said they thought I was a disqualified driver. Well, I couldn't prove it at that minute. They gave me a breathalyzer. They took me to the police station, and I wouldn't blow in the machine at the police station. I wanted to see a friend of mine who was a policeman. Anyway, they come back an hour later. I said, let's blow in the machine. They said, oh, your time's left. They said, your mate's not here. Anyway, they took me to court. I went back a fortnight later. They said, oh, you're not a disqualified driver, but we're now going to do you for the other thing. I said, what other thing? They said, the drink driving. When I actually went to court, the officer in the court said that I wasn't over the limit of the side of the road. And I just passed the drive-wise thing and got 6 months off my licence. They give me another 2 years.
Stop.
The magistrates couldn't believe why I was even in the court. Because
do you think that would the magistrate have known you're previous on this?
I don't know about it, but
because they might have thought here comes Kenny, bit of an iffy character, loves a drink. Do you think that's what they thought? Maybe
they went out for about quarter of an hour to discuss it.
Yeah.
Come back and they said, we don't really understand why you're here because it wasn't over the limit of the side of the road. But then they said, we've got to give you another 2-year ban because you didn't blow in the machine in the station. I said, well, I wasn't over the limit on the side of the road. You've
had 5 drink driving bans. I mean, I can hear a lot of people, Kenny, probably shouting at the radio, and what's wrong with this man?
Over the years. It's been a while now.
So you're not doing it anymore. Did you work... But once you've done it once, did you not think that's not worth the hassle?
Yeah, I know, but, I lived in a pub for 30 years, so it's just sort of a bit...
It went with it.
It's part of my life, really,
One of the problems, as I understand it, with people who do drink drive is that 90% of the time they get away with it. Maybe more than 90%. And that, of course, emboldens you, doesn't it? You sort of feel a sense of, it's fine, I'm probably not going to get caught, and then you do.
First time I ever got done, I came out of the club one night, and a police officer was standing at the side of the road, and I was with a friend, and he asked me if it was my car. I said, yeah. He said, what's in the boot? I said, a mat and a spare tyre. He looked in the mat, spare tyre, and let me go. And then next one, I had 3 police cars behind me, and they stopped me for a warrant for arrest, and it was a producer. When you get a producer? I didn't go back with the producer, and then... Well, obviously, they've done me for drink driving, so... That was the first one I got done. But the silly thing for the producer, I know, but obviously I'd had a drink, but, so... But anyway, so, yeah, that's my story about getting done, and I wasn't even drunk, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, I mean, the sympathy levels are off the scale at this end, I think, Kenny. Thank you, mate, for that. Good luck, and stay off the sauce. Sounds like he has done 5 times getting nabbed. And there's probably, I'm sure over the years I've been doing this job, that there's arguably been, I must have talked to callers or people or highlighted a story where someone's been done even more than that, because it does happen, of course. This is the proposal that the government may well be changing the drink drive laws to reduce the amount of alcohol you can legally have, putting it in line with Scotland and other European countries, although the data from some of those countries, particularly Scotland, is inconsistent. There's no unequivocal headline that says, yeah, look, we reduced the levels and look at the result. Nobody drinks and drives. Hasn't quite worked out like that, but in some countries they do have a lower level. Thoughts on that, and I'm sure this will continue, and more with Peter Cardwell, who's here after 4 o'clock. Good afternoon.
Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, what's going on?
Well, we're talking about the drink drive limit as well. There's so many people who want to talk about that. And also, will it actually stop accidents? And what about the country pub? I spoke to someone recently who runs a pub who said it's 40% more expensive now to run a pub than it was before COVID. So is this going to push them over the edge? We'll also talk about jury trials as well. We've got the former Justice Secretary Alex Chalk who's going to speak to us a bit later on in the programme, because the Conservatives are very unhappy about this. And actually lots of barristers as well who aren't political say that actually this isn't going to help the backlog in the Crown Courts. So,
how, just on that point of politics, how did Kemi Baden not get on today?
Not very well. I thought it was a pretty lacklustre from her, but also Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions, they just got into the weeds of a lot of quite complicated issues, and I think they lost the public. There were a couple of things where she made some reasonable points. He was admonished by the Speaker, actually, at one stage as well, for criticising her questions, and the Speaker said, look, it's not about the quality of the questions, it's about the quality of your answers, Prime Minister. So very, very interesting from that perspective, but a lacklustre start to the year for
that's, I mean, for her, there was